A lot happened in episode 7, Red Horse. As with every episode, some people are wondering why things happened the way they did. So as I go down the list of each character that was in the episode, I'll provide some insight and some transparency on the outcome, rank changes, meta facts, and rewards, if any. And I'll try to speed up, because there's a lot. I'll deep dive if there's anything to deep dive on, and if I miss something, just ask in the comment section or Discord. I also asked everyone to submit any questions that they had off the top, so if the question involves the topic that I'm on and or the character I'm on, I'll hit on it. And these were some great questions, so I think this session will settle some nerves and clear up any major misconceptions of how this shit works. I prefer that players just try to enjoy the ride, and is why I don't really divulge much of the mechanics unless it's absolutely necessary. But, you know, some people want to know how the ride works after they get off. I'm okay with players being curious and staying curious. If I share what I do behind a curtain, then this will kind of cross over into a level of meta that compromises the mystery associated with it all, which takes the fun out of it for me. Because motivations could be compromised for the wrong reasons. And I have fun with there being mystery. That's what makes it fun for me. And I have to be having fun to do this. But I do want to be transparent for the sake of addressing a few topics that came up that I feel has the potential to be toxic due to some reasonable misconceptions that developed around the topic of metagaming and flaws in the rank system. So going forward, I think it would be a cool idea to open the floor up for questions that I can then address in these recap videos. And usually I do it live, but I chose not to do it this time, just because the level of deep diving I gotta do. Just didn't really want to record and edit, or video record and edit. And plus, it's the time, and it's like 3 a.m. right now. So I'm gonna go down each character and hit on facts for them. You know, I could do timestamps for each character. I'll try to do that if time permits. Okay, let's go. So let's start off by touching a major misconception with how this works. This could put things in perspective. The player of Makai asked if he was successful or not, and I thought that was a perfect example of the point of Gamma Haven. Makai got his head cut off and his home attacked. On the flip side, he met a god, learned the true history, and gained great power. So whether he won or lost, in my personal opinion, is irrelevant, because if he won, to some it didn't look like it. But to him, depending on what his goals were, it could be a win. So what matters the most is the story and what you got from it. And I try to give everyone, win or lose, something to build off of. So I used to want to give only perks and keywords as rewards for story options, but I find value in giving something to reward role playing instead whenever I can. So usually when characters get something, it's because I found an opportunity to give them something. Whereas, you know, sometimes you have characters that didn't really do anything. Sometimes I find something for them to do if maybe their submission didn't really have anything. I'll find an opportunity to plug them in somewhere that would result into something happening for them. But sometimes I just, you know, I can't make something out of nothing. Sometimes I can. So if you didn't get anything, it's more so I couldn't find something to get you in the mix with. So let's start with Maira Dare. The Monster Island event was specifically created to get Maira off of the island. Maira had been displaced after her defeat and capture by Anarchy. She escaped Anarchy's prison, which was a story phase that she was successful with. That's how she was able to get out. whenever you lose or whenever you are captured, you are automatically placed in the story phase to get out. So that's just part of the consequences. That same episode was what I used to put the Instigator into the game as a full-blown player. And because I wouldn't keep him there, I had him be Maira's ticket out of the prison. So she was escaping. I saw it as an opportunity to get the Instigator in there and both of them get out. So sometimes I'll lead players into one another to see what they do with that relationship and give them a chance to use one another, discover synergies, or develop rivalries. And these two seem to hit it off at first. However, the next episode, Maira decided to split from the Instigator and leave the island on his ship, but she failed her role. So her role to escape the island became a role against the Instigator because she was taking his ship against his will. The Instigator was handicapped because he was fighting the Survey Day at the same time. However, this was offset by his ability over magic tech. And then what went more into his favor was the fact that he created that ship. So she failed her role against the Instigator, which is why she couldn't get off the island in that episode. So at this point, I knew I wanted to progress Maira, especially after 2 episodes of all this island narrative. She was trapped in a jail. She got to an island and now she's stuck on an island because she failed the role. So I knew I wanted to create an event that could give her a means off of the island, since teleporting away with the Instigator was ruled out. He wasn't, she kind of ruined that. So coincidentally, the players of John Musketmouth and Cervantes, 2 pirate themed characters, were submitted and ready for action. So when I saw them, I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do with that. And I was half expecting Maira to see this as a way off as well when she's, when I put that event up there. And she did. So Maira's Rage Mist gave her the skill of the inhabitants of the island. Her animalistic nature was depicted by her stealthy and almost predator-like maneuverability through the jungle. That was from her Rage Mist's. That was from her ability, Renegade Agent. That's just something her ability does that allows her to leech the skills and abilities of living creatures that breathe that shit in. And this was also the only reason she could pilot the ship to get off of the island. So let's say if she didn't have that, the only way off of the island for her would be to get someone to take her back. That's why skills are important. So luckily she had that ability. I made a conscious decision to not have Maira encounter Cervantes, Ali, and John, and this was because I knew that the pirates would be encountering Nova, which I thought was enough. So since I knew Drav Mas was also coming to this event and would be leaving with Deathtude, I thought it would be perfect for her to take Drav's ship, and that's why it played out that way. Maira, I rode Maira. I rode Maira against Drav. I factored in the task of escaping the island of pirates and monsters, and your biggest advantages were from having the time to adapt to the island and ambush the people coming to the island. The island being unfamiliar to them, so you had like a one-up on them. And you were successful. You go from below average rank to average rank. So by the time this video comes out, I might not have the wiki updated, but it will be soon. But you go from below average to average, okay? And as a reward for completing and surviving these trials and tribulations, and what I mean by that is every now and then I'll have a character go through something that spans maybe over a couple episodes, and I consider you being caught by Anarchy, being put into his prison, getting off of the island with Instigator, like that's pretty much a quest. It's like a campaign, like a mini campaign that I put you on. So another reason why winning and losing doesn't matter is because I'm building a story out of whether it's a win or a loss. So for example, and we'll get to it, but Marshall, you're on a raft in the middle of an ocean. If you don't think I'm, I could make something of that. It really depends on what your actions are, but I usually intend on going into it, making something of it. But anyway, As a reward for going through that, Maira, your Rage Mist gains the keyword fears. Fears. So your mist had an unprecedented reaction on the creatures called the Starved. Okay? These are creatures that exist on the island, and their natural skill is to sense fear. And this has been baked into by your mist. So it was like it was a weird reaction that had happened with their brains, and it made it so that your mist was able to capture that skill permanently. Now the Starved are from, or I had a little lore contest and had people create monsters that exist on the island. I wanted creatures that were non-intelligent, and the Starved, I chose that one. So for example, by having feared, the keyword attached to your ability Rage Mist, you could justify now absorbing knowledge of what your targets fear. Maybe they become delusional and scared, in addition to going berserk. So right now they go crazy, and they can't see you, and they go crazy and attack whatever's around them. But now you can kind of, with the fear keyword, if it has anything to do with fears, you can kind of play with that. It expands your Rage Mist ability. So you also gain a perk from a looted, you said you wanted to loot some bodies on the island, and you were successful. So you gain a perk, and you looted the Farsight Dorja, if I'm pronouncing that right, from Fenton Miles, from his dead body. Now Fenton Miles is that Survey Day person, leader who pretty much was leading the Survey Day in the Instigator's absence. He was kind of taking it over, and he was the one putting Lord Bayrinth in power and removing Rifmusin from power. So he has the Farsight Dorja, which is an item that was submitted when I was asking for something really crazy, right? It was one of the items with the Fist of the Endless. So you now have the Farsight Dorja, and you can create up to 3 astral projections of yourself at a time. You can send an astral projection in your place to an event, but they cannot gain ranks or lose ranks for you. So if you die, you can continue life through an astral projection, but you must roleplay as a more hostile and aggressive version of your past self. And this is all just based off of the lore that the person that created that item, this is based off of the lore of that item, this ability. So you can create 3 astral projections of yourself. You can send them to events. They can't gain ranks for you. They can't lose ranks for you. So they're kind of like your feelers. They can go out there and act as you without any, consequence or gain. But the best part is, if you die, if your character dies, you can continue your life through your astral projection. And that's strictly based off of the lore that you submitted. So, or whoever submitted for that item. But you must roleplay as a more hostile and aggressive version of your past self. So if you were a good person, you're a bad person now. And if it happens again, as long as you have the Farsight Dorja, if you obtain it again after death, you can repeat this with each resurrection. But each resurrection, you have to become more monstrous and fiendish. So you go from bad to worse to really bad until you're just a fiendish existence. And your thinking is evil. It's just terrible. You lose more of your humanity the more you are resurrected, because you're essentially taking on the form. You are living your life through your astral projections, and then your astral projections. So that's why you kind of get worse and worse. So take a look at the Farsight Dorja's lore to kind of get an idea of how I came up with that. We're also going to do something new. It's called story lore, and every character is going to get story lore. Every character that participated in the episode. And story lore, what that is I'm going to present to you a scenario, and you're going to write something for the scenario, and then I'm going to share it with everyone. So your scenario is, after the instigator locks you outside to survive in the Monster Island jungle, share with us the story of when Maira encountered a physical and or mental threat or obstacle in the jungle. And tell us the things that you needed to do to survive up until episode 7. So story lore in these scenarios are really to kind of provide some closer looks into your character, bridge some gaps in time, and give you an opportunity to show us more of your character from your pencil or pen. But, you know, stick to that scenario. You know, don't fucking submit something about Dr. Skriller, okay? Jesus Christ. All right, Jeremiah Oliver. Let's see here. Jeremiah Oliver. You chose Trial and Throne, the event in Nibu. Okay? Your goal was to sabotage Makai and empower Amanda V during the trial so that Amanda V ultimately becomes the leader of Nibu. So, Jeremiah, you also teamed up with Maxima to ensure success of the plan. Even with Vegter, Naila, Tempus, and the betrayal of Maxima, Jeremiah was still successful in his endeavor. And you're probably wondering how, right? Well, this is how. The biggest contributing factor to Jeremiah's success was his secret ally, the Futurist, who is able to manifest one's wishes, desires, goals, and aspirations from dreams into the real world. So the Futurist is no different than the Fist of the Endless, in the sense that it is simply me spicing up the circumstances. Any moment I could throw in something that could cause disadvantages or advantages to the parties affected by it. And that's completely out of the player's control. It's out of everyone's control. But make certain I will make it tie into your character, you know, to build your character if I do something like that. So the Futurist was given to Jeremiah because he had come off of a really big loss, which in turn justified some extreme hatred and amplified Jeremiah's existing lust for power and growth. And the Futurist's abilities was perfect for Jeremiah and anyone who is in kind of like that very shadowy, behind the curtain, you know, wealthy, powerful person like Jeremiah is. The Futurist was a NPC created by one of the players of the game. So that's why that exists, so I can go in there and kind of fit them into the story. I never will let a player create a character that they themselves can use as a benefit, unless it made sense for me. More often than not, the NPC you create is going to be used against you or someone else. That's not, you know, that's just to avoid someone creating like anti-Rtype X or something like that. But it all works out, and this is an example of that. The Futurist I paired up with Jeremiah. And, you know, just another reason why winning and losing doesn't really matter, and why ranks are, you know, takes a back seat to stuff, to the story, because at any point I can just throw in a fucking boss ass strong person to go with your enemy. And before you know it, you know, they have the one up, and it's just for the sake of the story, like in this scenario. So, Jeremiah's publicity keyword made it so that everyone who shook his hand trusts and spreads positive sentiments about him, Jeremiah. So he used this influence on the people to get them to feel the way he wanted them to feel about Amanda. So this essentially gave him the edge over Tempest's empathy-based influence, and an advantage over Vegter, Makai, and Naila's information collecting, because no matter what their information said, their minds were already pretty much cursed by his publicity handshake. So Jeremiah's criminal alter ego as well, you know his shady background I forget his name. It also had the initials of J.O. Jason Oxen. So that alter ego's shady background justified his connection to Amanda V, which was a G-type known for dealing in Haven. So that's how he was even able to get to that event. Because remember, he had to have a political tie to Nebu, and he was tied to Amanda V, and he had Maxima with him, which could also, she could be justified as well. The futurists turned Jeremiah's dreams into a reality, like I said. So Jeremiah's lust for power over everything manifested as a corrupted version of Nebu's culture. It is in no way, shape, or form an actual chi beast, and it is purely of the futurists' making. I would never let or encourage a player to copy another player's ability, without altering the ability into something that's more unique. So, if Amanda V won the trial and gained the wolf, it would merely be because she is of his cult. She is of Makai's culture and is an NPC within the confines of the creator of within the confines of the creator of Nebu's lore. So I say that to say, granted, Chi Beast is something exclusive to Makai, because Amanda V is pretty much something created within his world. I would also consider her a Chi Beast wielder because she's an NPC and I'm controlling it. So that's a lot different than a player having a Chi Beast. So just keep that in mind. If Jeremiah would have lost this event, I likely would have had the futurist step in, in a harsher manner than he did later on, resulting in, this sort of chi binding. So I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it happened this way, him winning. The futurist is meant to manifest the player's dreams by giving them access to capabilities that they couldn't normally pull off. So the player of Jeremiah, I felt, did a great job of role-playing by wishing for chi disrupting devices. In his submission, that's what he was going into the submission with. He was going to have the futurist provide chi disrupting devices. That's all he was going to have the futurist do. Chi disrupting devices. As opposed to, the destruction of this person or that person. You can't control what you can't control what you destroyed. So I like how Jeremiah went into this not wanting to destroy because he ultimately wanted to control something. That's why I felt it was great role playing. So I turned that chi disrupting device into the Atlas Baylis because I thought that would be a cool way to reflect Jeremiah's heart through the futurist way of manifesting these ideas. So I like how how Jeremiah had confidence in his own ability to influence along with Maxima's influence. So he used the futurist to take care of what he himself couldn't take care of. And that was Makai's chi and all the people who use it. He pretty much split the work. He said, futurist, you take care of these dudes because I'm not going to be fighting Makai. I know all their chi stuff is out of my league. You lock them down with this chi binding and I'll take care of influencing, the people. So good stuff, TG. Good stuff, Jeremiah. TVG, who is the player of Jeremiah, he asks, how much time do I have to prepare for Makai? On another note, would Jeremiah even realize the need to plan for preparing for Makai? The last thing I want to do is be accused of metagaming. Good question. The part about Makai being there for a decade was exclusive to Makai's location. He could come back any second or not. It depends on what Makai decides to do. If he decides to go for a story or an event next phase. That's all. Where he is, the time is just different. Think of I'll leave it at that. Your question about whether you should prepare or not it's not metagaming. Okay, this game is metagaming. The game is a meta game. Everything is on the table and it's no different than when you watch a show. Players are supposed to use the information they get from the show, especially if you have the ability to obtain this information. That's why everything is in the character sheets. That's why when I do the recaps, I lay out what's there. At the end of the day, I'm writing the story, so I will make it appear like it was natural. So if you're preparing for Makai, so if the player of Jeremiah wrote in his submission, I will prepare for Makai coming back by doing X, Y, and Z, I assure you it will not appear that way in the episode, or else it wouldn't make sense. I got to make it make sense. So the whole entire strategy of Gamma Haven is to think ahead and use your abilities and use your abilities in the use of details to the fullest. Okay. The downside to this is, submitting your actions all focused on what you think may happen and it not happening the way you plan, thus wasting your efforts. That's the downside. You know what I mean? Let's say, you know Makai is capable of coming back next episode. You write a whole bunch of lines talking about how you're going to prepare, and then he not show up. That's the downside, and that's okay. And that's also why it's really important for everyone to kind of, pay attention to the part of the submission when I ask for a certain amount of bullet points, because the limited space for bullet points is on purpose. It's so you have to focus and prioritize what your goals are, or otherwise you'll be able to prepare for anything because you have infinite space. So I do kind of want to remind people to kind of adhere to that. It's pivotal to limit how much you submit, and is why I ask for limited bullets. It's really, really important. Not only does it make it easier for me to determine what a character's doing, therefore making it easier to get an episode out faster, because there's only a few things that you only have a few priorities, and details are just details. When I give you 5 bullet points for details, those details are to support your 2 objectives that you wrote down. So, a lot of people, when I asked for their objectives, I asked for a primary objective and a secondary objective, and then the details was 5 bullet points of more objectives, when they're details that should support your 2 objectives. But a perfect example of metagaming in a metagame is me telling you when Makai is actually deciding to come back. Now that's a whole nother level of metagaming. That's the only way you can metagame if it's triggered by me. And I would only do that if your ability allows it. So, for example, the Fist of the Endless has an ability where you can see another character's submission. That's metagaming. That's like actual metagaming. Or for example, Anarchy. Let's say one day he was, because he has so much control over technology, if there's a character in the game who's using the Bulwark network, his ability allows for me to say, hey, this person's doing this person's doing X and Y. And that's because it will simulate how his technology would work for him. So that's what I meant when I say there's no metagaming unless you have the ability for it. And if you are paying attention to a person's character sheet, seeing what they're capable of, seeing what they gained in the last episode, that's how it's supposed to be. It's different than Dungeons and Dragons. You got to remember that the story is being told by me, so it's all being filtered. And I'm still the gatekeeper in a lot of ways, so I'm keeping track of all of that. So TVG asks, it was said that my mutation slightly affected Maxima just through slapping her in the face. Is this implied that I can explore options in the future of expanding my command beyond the handshake? Options are always explorable, TVG. Options are always explorable. But that part was just flavor text. I was just paying homage to your publicity keyword that you attach to your command ability. Just letting you know that I remember what it does. I kind of wanted to show the people what it does. But it was also a nod to the theme song that was being played during the reveal of Atlas Balisk. And that theme song, I call it Open Hand, referring to the open-handed slap on Maxima. So that's what that was about. That's why I said, slightly, but you can totally expand on that, spend a story phase, trying to expand on it, and, we can make it happen. Speaking of Maxima, she was actually acting on her own when she decided to betray Jeremiah Oliver, at least to my knowledge. That's how I perceived her submission. I thought this was great role playing and something that her character would totally do to gain leverage in the world. And I totally encourage that behavior. Even though you lost, don't get discouraged. You know, I was hoping you would win. Kind of not. I was hoping you wouldn't, because man, that would have been fucked up, because Jeremiah was pretty much not betrayed in the previous episode, but he lost an ally in the previous episode. And then you to come and then betray him, that it would have been fucked up. But that's why I say, the Futurists eventually would have came in, if not not this episode, the next episode, because I wanted Jeremiah to have like a big comeback. So I'm actually glad he won, so it could happen this episode. But more on that later in regards to Maxima. TVG asks, is it possible to upgrade my bodyguards for better Nibunese bodyguards? I think that would be a great way to expand your bodyguard ability, actually. So stay tuned for your rewards. All right. He then asks, is Atlas an even stronger company since they own all of Nibu? If so, what's the scope of Atlas's corporation's newfound power? I typically like to slow things down when it comes to continental takeovers, right? So it took a prequel and a season and a half for Anarchy to take Haven over. And it took Makai several episodes to even get to this point where he is now. So I would like to see you utilize a story option to build it up to complete this Atlas takeover. As it stands now, you have your foot in the door. You got to remember, you put Amanda in control and are behind the curtain. You're behind Amanda. Amanda is her own living, thinking NPC who at the end of the day is from Nibu, and she's very passionate about Nibu and the people behind her. So I would like to see you play with these concepts more. Atlas didn't just come in and, take over everything. You had to put her in power first. So that was the first step. You had someone in power. I feel like if Jeremiah would have came in and just ran for Nibu King, then the Nibunese people wouldn't have it. They wouldn't have it. But now that you have the Atlas Basilisk, that's something you could, I would like to see that in a story phase for you to actually like take over. But at this point, it hasn't happened yet. So take it slow. The next question. If Jeremiah hired a trainer in Nibu to strengthen his combat, would that actually add any buffs or bonuses? Good question. So your 3 abilities hold more weight when I'm considering odds and outcomes. Your 3 abilities. To take on a skill, that would grant you a perk. Okay. Excuse me. And in turn, that could affect details depending on, the challenge you're facing. So for example, Tempus has the judo perk. It isn't his ability, but it allows me to show him being somewhat effective in a combat scenario as opposed to being tossed around. I'm not gonna, it wouldn't make sense for you to have 3 abilities and then let you learn other, abilities. So you can learn perks that kind of spice up the narrative and, makes it so you don't appear a certain way when you're fighting someone. So, with that said, if you were to learn a combat ability, a fight with an actual fighter would look a lot different. Right now, I see Jeremiah as somebody who cannot fight. So if you ever fought someone who had an actual fighting ability, you'd get tossed up. You'd get tossed up real good. But with a perk, that would change the way that looks. Not necessarily give you any advantage, but it would change the way it looks and other things. So if you were going against someone who didn't have a combat ability, I would like to think you would have an advantage for sure. But going against someone who actually has a combat ability, it's more so for flavor. So, for example, if Eponi, remember when she met Tempus? If Eponi wanted to, she could have mopped the floor with Tempus with his judo skill when they first encountered each other, but I don't think that was her goal. It was just a little sparring match. Next question from TVG. Is my Basilisk stuck in Nibu, or can I take it to Haven? Another thing, what's some of its powers? Okay. Remember, the Nebu Basilisk is what I made from your ask for chi disrupting devices. You asked for chi disrupting devices and I turned it into the Nebu Basilisk. So it's all from the Futurist. So it's more of an NPC or an object that holds in place the narrative that the Nebi people are nullified. The entire theme is that the people love Amanda V, and though bound by the Basilisk, they don't mind it because they are affected by your influence. So you can kind of imagine it's like, imagine it as a spiritual shackle, you know, the way some of us are in real life to our cell phones, way of living, or mortgage. So yes, it's only over Nebu. It is the Futurist helping you achieve your dream. And that dream was to take over Nebu. So it stays there. The next question is, what is the full extent of the Futurist's power? The Futurist is like a special weapon and a story reward that I'm giving you, Jeremiah, who does exactly what it says he does in his lore, on his sheet, on his wiki entry. He does exactly that. And I'll tweak what you do with him if I feel it's too much. But for the most part, I want you to kind of use this time with the Futurist as long, you know, while you have it, you know, go gung ho. And you probably won't notice until it's happening to your character, but sometimes I'll grant big advantages like this one just to create a certain narrative. So if one of your characters in game ever suddenly get an ally, and you know, it's because I'm trying to bolster something. I'm trying to stir the pot. So that's pretty much what the Futurist is. Look at his character, look at his entry, and have at it and enjoy it while it lasts. You go from below average to average. Okay. You gain the Corrupt Nebi keyword for your bodyguard ability. So this justifies having new bodyguards with their own chi abilities, which is something I'll roll, and I'll roll it now. So I went and I rolled random abilities, and these are going to be flavored like chi, because you know all the Nebunese people have an innate affinity. They have an affinity for chi energy. So I went and rolled random abilities just like I did for your previous bodyguards, but now they're kind of chi themed. So your first bodyguard is Chi Serene Nature, Enhanced Hearing. So through the chi energy of Serene Nature, this guard has enhanced hearing. The other Nebi guard, Chi Spirit, Enhanced Fast Healing. So they have enhanced fast healing through their chi spirit. So you can alternate between your original two guards and these two guards. I would imagine these Nebi guards will probably remain in Nebu. So just keep that in mind. Enhanced hearing, enhanced healing. Okay. 2 at a time. Can't have all 4. You got to alternate between the two. You also gain the perk, the Futurist and Atlas Basilisk. So for as long as the Futurist is allied with you, the Atlas Basilisk is in effect suppressing the chi within all of Nebu's inhabitants, stripping them from their fantastic chi abilities. So what that does is, you know, the Atlas Basilisk is there to keep people in check for you while you're in charge. Okay. Because you got to remember, the Nebu people, they're fierce. They will fight for their country, their nation, but not with the Atlas Basilisk there. All right. And for your story lore, the scenario is, tell us about your first night in Nebu as a foreigner. How did you handle the hostility for being a foreigner? Also, how did this encounter, or any encounter that you had, lead to the first Atlas business Jo is thinking of building in Nebu? So your first night in Nebu, something happened that gave you an idea for the first Atlas business you're going to build in Nebu. And I want to know what that is. Not only do I want to know how your first night was and what happened, but I want to know what is the business that was inspired by, you know, your encounter. All right. Maxima. Moving on to Maxima. Maxima chose Trial and Throne. her goal was to use her telepathy on Jeremiah to trick him into thinking his plans are working in order to deliver him to the Beast King himself. Maxima stated in her submission that she will not shake hands with Jeremiah at all, and this is another example of why this is a meta type game. Otherwise, most of you all would be shaking hands with Jeremiah when you meet him as a stranger, as it is such a common gesture to shake someone's hand. I would like to think majority of you meeting him would shake his hand, but you know, if you couldn't look and be some sort of meta and use some sort of the meta, that would be the fate of a lot of you. So Maxima says she's not shaking his hand, and instead she'll bow. And it makes sense for her character's personality and upbringing to bow. So that goes back to what I was saying about making it make sense. If it really came down to it and there was a scene where I had to show these two and I didn't, and she was going to not shake his hand, I would make her bow. As opposed to just saying, nope, she's not shaking your hand. Nope, she's not doing it. Not doing it. Because then it wouldn't make sense. Right? It is to be assumed that Maxima had manipulated Jeremiah Oliver's mind to get him that far into her plan. Jeremiah Oliver won the role against Maxima, but the idea of her betrayal was so awesome to me that I still wanted to have it unfold for a big plot twist. So, you know, when I saw that Maxima was going to betray him, I was like, oh shit, this is going to be cool. When she lost the role, I was like, fuck that. I'm still going to have it happen. It's just I'm going to flip it twice. So Muramusa did not submit an action, and Maxima's submission included him, but he never submitted anything. So that's why I had to kind of exclude him and say he was somewhere else. So, man, Muramusa's fierce. I was like, he jumped in that Discord like, I'm gonna fucking rescue Maxima, and Jeremiah, you want to rip your balls off. Love it. I love it. It's all in good fun. Just, you know, if you're gonna, you know, just have fun with it. Be easy. Jeremiah's retaliation has reversed the deal that you made with Amanda V. Okay, so that deal that you made with Amanda V, I'm talking to you, Maxima, that deal that you made, how you had like you had control over her financial structure, that was reversed when Jeremiah won. I just kind of wanted to make it seem like, you know, you were on the up and up, you know. If it weren't for Jeremiah's Atlas CEO ability, I would say that he wouldn't have had enough business savvy to reverse it. But Jeremiah is probably the only person other than Mistress Scorn that could, cock block something like that. So consider that cock blocked. Maxima, your rank goes from below average to low. Okay, this is the second L you took. I would recommend maybe doing some story options to get stronger. Or not, you never know what could happen. You might get the fucking Fist of the Endless, who knows? Also, you've been held captive as a result of your loss. Okay, because you were held captive, you're going to have to use the story option next time. When a player loses, I often subject them to a string of challenges or an obstacle that you have to bounce back from. So this obstacle could be imposed by your captor, depending on, if they're spending some bullet points in their submission on talking about how they're addressing your capture, or it might be something that I make up. That's why it's important for players to really adhere to the bullet limits in their submission as well. You don't want Jeremiah to have like a whole bunch of things that he's doing to keep you from getting away, and then have a whole bunch of bullets focusing on what he really wants to focus on. Again, that's why it's limited. Is he going to use details to make sure that you don't get away, or is he going to focus on, preparing for Makai coming for him? That's why it's important to adhere to those limits. I love this beat right here. So it's by design to allow limited room to state your actions. I can't stress that enough. It's about prioritizing whatever you don't touch on. I fill in the gaps if I need to, to make it make sense. Anyway, as a result, and I think you'll like this, as a result of your tactical intelligence, and I think even in your submission, you wrote something that was along the lines of, you know, I'm going to try to get away. I'm only allowing this because of how I feel the story should go, and I think it would be interesting. But I declare that Maxima has managed to make the best of her situation and somehow ends up a prisoner, but with special treatment. And I'll let you elaborate on that in your story lore. So yeah, you're captured, but you're not going to be like Vegter and Naila in the prisons. Okay, you're the type of character you are. I would like to think you would talk your way, you know, along with your mind manipulation, you would talk your way to a better place. So with that said, your story lore. The scenario for your story lore is you are being dragged into the Nebu dungeons. Tell us how you managed to get from the dungeons to being held in a special chamber under the watchful eye of the corrupt council. But still a captive. You're still a captive, but you're now in a special chamber and you're being watched by the corrupt council. Okay? All right. Makai, or Void Makai Funuichi, or I guess you can call him Yaga Makai. Makai's goal was to secure the Chi Beast Wolf to reclaim the throne. But, you know, that wasn't just your only goal. Your other objective was to meet Mama Yaga and become the ultimate life force. So we can't act like just getting the Chi Wolf, the Wolf Chi was your goal. There was more to it. So I felt it would be awesome to have Void Makai, you know, this eternal contract bound character to the Void, you know, this person that is bound to the Void, meet Yaga in the afterlife. Only Yaga would have the ability to pull him away from going back into the Void. Okay. But really, this was all part of the trial. The trial never really ended. Okay, that's why I said, you know, when he obtained the wolf, it didn't feel like it felt when he got the Basilisk. It felt almost unfulfilling, and that's because it wasn't over. In regards to Mama Yaga, when players create NPCs, I don't let the NPCs become a direct benefit to the person creating them, nor would I allow an NPC to be created just to go after another player, because that's essentially creating a new character to put into the game. So instead of Mama Yaga becoming this savior NPC, which is what she is, I thought it would be cool to not only incorporate her into Nebu's bizarre lore, you know, about the golden spacecraft, you know, while trying to tie in a origin story for the planet, you know, and also throwing in Ivan in there. But I also wanted to transfer some of that Mama Yaga-ness into Makai, giving him the responsibilities that she would have had. So this was obtained through death. So yes, Makai lost, but did he lose really? That's why the story is what matters. The story is what matters to me. It's a show. It's a ride. So yeah, Makai lost, but he didn't lose. There was a grand scheme involving Makai and the Fist of the Endless as well that nobody knew about. And I'll touch on that later with other characters. Because you got to remember, people plan things, but if one thing goes wrong, that can cut off a whole branch of things that could have happened. And there was a really big effect that took place, a rippling effect, and we'll get into that. So stay tuned. It gets deep. A lot happened this episode, and a lot didn't happen because of the things that happened. So moving on, despite being killed in the story, this was not actually a death. Okay, I know I had Makai's head cut off, but he didn't actually die. Jeremiah's not high enough level, not high enough rank apart to kill Makai. So Makai only had his head taken off because I wanted him to go through further trials and become this savior figure resurrected by Yaga. So merely a director's call for story purposes. But while in this limbo stage, the time was different for you. You feel like you lived a good span of your life while in this limbo, learning about your history and learning the powers of the Yaga. but time has not progressed the same in the real world. So you'll have the option of returning to the game to take an event or a story phase. You know, the next phase, you can do a story or you can jump right back in. You can stay in limbo for a bit, you know, using a story option and build up some hype, you know, or get some story development in, or hop back and finish business. It's up to you. Jeremiah, I feel like that creates a little dynamic there. You know, Jeremiah, you know, do you wait for Makai and prepare, you know, write a whole bunch of things preparing for Makai? Or do you, you know, take action and try to call his bluff and spend a story option building in preparation? So we'll see. TS, who I think is the player of Marshall, TS asks, can anybody get a Chi Beast? I kind of answered that, and you, of course you didn't know at the time. So, but I do want to still answer this question. The Chi Beasts are creatures in Makai's story that exist to be captured by Chi Beast wielders. It is Makai's third ability, and that's the only reason why no one could get a Chi Beast the normal way. The player could totally try and get some kind of Nibu witch doctor work done to majestically, you know, have their body switched into a vessel that is able to hold a Chi Beast. But even then, I would alter it so that everyone can be as original as possible, because some people just don't want people copying off of them, and I can understand that. You know, you have this idea and you don't want people just coming and altering it. It's like giving birth. Then someone watches you do that, goes through half of the effort, and makes an ugly version, at least to you, an ugly version of what you just gave birth to, and then you have to look at that or know that it exists. Or it could turn out really awesome and really that whatever they gave birth to looks way better than your baby, but they look ugly because they went through half of the effort to conceive that thing. It's living with your DNA. That's the Atlas Basilisk. It's a corruption. It's an abomination, and I think it's a perfect object to just, you know, on this golden city. Jeremiah comes over and he just pollutes that shit. Like, Jeremiah is literally the opposite of Makai, if you really think about it. Jeremiah wants power for the wrong reasons, like it's just a hunger. And the way he gets to it, and the way he rises to the top, and the way he got to where he is now is just crooked. It's, I don't know, I feel the color purple and dark clouds. And when I picture Jeremiah Oliver, I picture him in a purple suit. And I always picture the clouds dark purple. You know, at least when he was summoning the Atlas Basilisk. But anyway, in Makai, he's I just I sense gold. You know, someone that literally is fighting for everything, and he actually goes through so much to try to get to the top. And then you got Jeremiah Oliver, who just gets there like all the time. His methods are so like quick, dirty, but efficient. It's just all power and money. And here you got Makai literally dying to get to where he is. And Makai and then Jeremiah just comes and just takes a shit on Nibu and controls it. Jeremiah's name right now in Discord is J.O. King of Nibu. Yo. So if it weren't for that one rule that I had, Jeremiah would totally be able to purchase Nibu and Chi Beasts. He would just pay the Chi Beast to jump inside of him. moving on. What was I saying? Yeah, so regarding the truth of Nebu and your newfound power, you learned that Nebu hasn't been pure for some time. Okay, so before there was anything, it was all of the void, and the keeper of the domain was the Void Mother. So just picture just in space is how I picture it. Just in space, out in the depths of space. This is before the tank was even made. There was just void. It's just void. The void existed. Within this space, there was this void, and the Void Mother was her domain. And that was until Mama Yaga came to this part of the galaxy where there was void, and began to create. So for all we know, Mama Yaga was sent there specifically to do that. Could it be by chance that this is where the void was? Did the void just happen to be here? Or was Yaga specifically sent here to create? Literally just come and create. And Yaga began to create. So the Void Mother took severe measures to counteract this by giving birth, which was a sacrifice she had to make, or it had to make, because it just sounded poetic. So it gave birth to Ivan, a living creature that can eliminate Mama Yaga, and he did through soul contracts. So, the same way Void Makai exists, he had died before, and now he was put back into a body, but there's a contract. So maybe back then Ivan had some crazy contracts with people doing his bidding, and he placed those people in power, similar to how he has the criminal network. So Makai has been given the power to counter Ivan, just as Mama Yaga countered the Void Mother. So Yaga Light is the ultimate life force, and that is its own element, similar to life energy, but it's a subset that cannot be controlled by Ivan, of course, right? So this frees Makai from that void vessel, that soul contract. You're totally pure. You're stripped from that. That is something that I rather do. Not saying all contracts you'll be able to break out of contracts, but we're getting ready to go into a part of the game where I'm opening up things and thinking further ahead. So what if for characters that die, expanding on afterlife, so and options for when you die, other than just not losing your character and starting a new one. Permadeath is so important to me that I feel it's also important to provide some options, some role-playing options for when you die. And I think the idea of Ivan and the Void contracts are amazing, because it's pretty darn neutral. Ivan is really a neutral person. If you really think about it, he's pretty chaotic neutral. So it's pretty random. You either create a new character or you continue with yours, but with a spin on your life. So I thought of thinking of other spins, and I thought it would be a great idea to have something like that with Makai. And it would only make sense that it would start with Makai, because he is of Ivan at this point. So, or at least his old self was, but he only has gotten here because of Ivan. Remember that the Neocon dragon, Chi Dragon, said that, and it was kind of telling the truth when it said this power is only obtained. You can only obtain this because you are also tied to the void. So even though it was lying about what it really wasn't, it was testing Makai to take its power straying from the path because it had nothing. He was here for the Chi Wolf, right? He was only here for the Chi Wolf, not some fucking neocon dragon. And Makai said, you know what? No, I don't know what this is. And that's how he passed. But he needed to have a tie to the void to even be in the realm that he's in, this limbo. We're talking ancient like energies here and stuff. So Makai is I wanted just some alternative afterlife options. And I love the void contract concept, and dead characters can still go that route. You know, as it does, that route has benefits. It has a lot of benefits. I'm willing to really dive deep with the contracts, and maybe one day the contract was written on a special piece of parchment that he didn't even know about, or something. Maybe there's something I actually give Ivan something that he can give his next contractee or recipient of the contract, and Ivan benefits from it, and it just creates this crazy like type of comeback character. You know what I mean? I'm willing to do shit like that. I mean, I can make the shit up. Anything that'll make the story interesting, and that's what it's about. So, Makai is he's not really the yin to Ivan's yang. It's just a whole nother option. So Makai, you go from exceptional down to high. Okay, you're back to high. Your undead chi manipulation is gone. You're gone. You're not in that body anymore. So it's not undead. It's Yaga manipulation. We're replacing undead chi with Yaga. Yaga is the ultimate life force, the ultimate chi. Ultimate in the sense that it cannot be controlled by the void. It can never become nothing, because it is light. It is the light. It is creation. So, your Chi Beast ability gets the wolf keyword, allowing you to tap into the wolf chi based power and tame the Chi Beast wolf along with your Basilisk. So we'll talk about what exactly that does. I would like to know. I know what I've seen you do with the Basilisk is summon it, and it's also made of chi energy. So I'm curious to see what ideas you have for the wolf. We can talk about that. I'm removing Inspired by Vengeance, that perk that you had. I'm also removing Abyssal Bound, because that's what it was, and I'm removing Nendra Cells, because I think that is irrelevant at this point. So, you're in a new body. I mean, that's up to you. Actually, I'm curious as to how you see yourself coming back. Does your head grow back? So we'll talk about it, because that's part of your appearance, I would think. I wouldn't want to. I didn't create how you would come back, because I feel like we should see what you look like, and that would determine the fashion you come back in. All right. So you might still be able to have Ninja Cells, but Abyssal Bound, definitely not Abyssal Bound. And you're not. I don't really feel like you're Inspired by Vengeance. You are the light. You are Yaga. You're more complete. You're more wholesome. Right. So you gain the perk Yaga Light. Okay, Yaga Light. When good characters die, they have the option of being reborn into a new character shaped by Yaga Makai. They can appear in any form that they please. The character, the player, they can appear in any form that they please, but it is of Yaga Makai. Okay, and you don't have to be a good guy, but you must live by a code centered around something that is benevolent, such as, no tolerance for killing, or live to protect children, some kind of code that is benevolent. Anything else can be anything else, you can do anything you want, but you have to live by that code. You have to represent that code. That is what you're about. I picture you being some kind of demigod. Okay. Or demi race. Think of the Devi from D&D. Some kind of like a demi race. And churches and religions being built around your particular code. You know what I mean? Those are just ideas, but you would be considered Yaga born, and you would be created to offset the abyssal bound, who are the people raised by attached to Ivan's contracts. Abyssal bound. You're created to offset that and you're also created in Nibu. So when you do come back in this new form, your second life, you would be created in Nibu. And of course, I would like you to be still tied to your past. But you have a purpose of strengthening whatever your code is about. Anyway, Yaga born are not held to a contract, but they are just held to that code, like I was saying. And whatever code you come up with, and I'll have to sign off on it. I'm sure it's going to be, it's pretty simple. A code that's benevolent. It can be a lot of things, and you can build your second character around that. But remember, you can come back as anything you want. You can come back as your old character if you want. It's just, I would probably change. I would probably, if you wanted to come back as your old character visually, I then will add a unique characteristic to you to symbolize that you are Yaga born. Because I do want y'all to be like a new race. You know what I mean? I know Gamma Haven's really everything. It's really everything. It's sci-fi, but it's crazy. Anyway, story lore. Your scenario. Before the trial of the wolf, tell us how you spent time with a council member, a member of the council, who is a blood relative, but is also one of those corrupt members that you were told about, after the fact. Tell us about a time you spent with a council member who is a blood relative, but is really corrupt and plans to betray you for Amanda V later on in the episode. So, share with us a snapshot of that and what that would look like. Someone that you really trust, but they're going to betray you. But at the time, your character didn't. What would a scene look like with your character? Also, share with us the council member. Share with us the council member that said something that sounded suspect that you brushed it off. So, within this scene, do a part where they say something that makes Makai go, what? And then but brush it off because you're like, nah, they're my blood relative. You got to remember, this is before Makai. I mean, to find out that your whole entire like ancestors were traitors and killed an alien and broke it down and used its resources, when this whole time you were taught to believe that that's not what happened. TVG asks, did anyone handle the big cocoon thing in the bayou? Yeah, the part with Poke Turner, Sister Wyrd, and Shiro. It was short. It's probably why you missed it. But let's move on to Poke Turner. Poke Turner. He chose the anomaly of the bayou. His goal was to nurture and aid whatever emerges from that cocoon. And the player also had a lot of countermeasures lined up. He was very cautious. Very cautious. I plan for there to be a great, immense, and chaotic, powerful entity inside of that cocoon that would attack any player who went for it. So when I saw Poke Turner come to this event, I thought this is gonna be a disaster, because he's talking about, protect it, nurture it, turn it against people. If he wins this role, this thing is going to start fucking shit up. So when I saw Poke Turner was going, I was like, damn. But luckily, Sister Wyrd, or also known as Saoirse, she arrived, and she ends up putting an end to all that because she won against him when I rolled. So Poke Turner, he did beat Shiro, who also appeared there, and in other places he appeared there. He beat Shiro in a roll, but he lost to Sister Wyrd, which is why it resulted in he teleported Shiro away, damn near killing him. But then he ended up getting pacified by Sister Wyrd. Okay. Poke Turner, he also there was a part where he displaced a group of NPCs who were sent to that location in error. So that group of NPCs that he teleported away, that was Michael Holland and his resistance from the Bulwark network, and that was due to some miscommunication on the Bulwark network app. Okay. So they had the wrong directions. They ended up in the wrong event, essentially, and we'll talk more about that later. But on a side note, Poke Turner and other godlike characters with abilities designed to make them unseeable or unnoticeable, invisible, teleport and all that. I just, regarding those type of characters, and because of the way they are, when they lose their role, the ways that the losses will be depicted they could seem jarring, extreme, and maybe sometimes bizarre, depending on how far I gotta twist it. But it's really the only way that I could depict the loss for that type of character, because of just how they were designed, right? So you would never see a character going toe to toe with Poke Turner. Why would his character let that happen? This is why there are scenes, for characters like this, their scenes are so much shorter and to the point. You know what I mean? Something to consider if you're thinking of making a character that's like that. I would like to do something with that eventually. I've been still thinking about it, but I really don't know what Poke Turner's goal is. I don't think he has one. So he is, to me, for Gamma Haven, he's just somebody that you really don't want to end up in your episode. That's why I kind of like it. Like, I haven't done anything with him because I have some things cooking, but I kind of like what he's doing right now. If that makes sense. He's like a wild card. Like, if Poke Turner ends up going to your event is going to be fucked up somehow, unless there's someone there that's specifically like locking shit down too, like Sister Wyrd. But you can end up in a situation with Poke Turner and you end up in another fucking event or something like that. So I kind of like that. He's like a true, like, he's truly chaos. He's like a random event, like a random encounter. You know what I mean? That you just don't want. So anyway, in regards to having characters like that, having an ability like that doesn't really protect you, but it more so limits the scope of what I can do for them. I tend to, for like really powerful characters, I tend to put them in positions that they have ripple effects on other things in the game, like the Instigator. But yeah, so something to consider when you make a character like that. I think I think I would like to see Poke Turner in a story option, just so I can see what exactly he wants to do. Poke Turner is a player who doesn't really he's not really in Discord like that, doesn't really talk about his character much. I think he's just enjoys fucking with everyone, so he has Poke Turner. So the only time you really hear about what Poke Turner's doing is when he's in an episode, but he's usually doing events. Like, he hasn't done the story option yet. At least I don't think he has. I don't recall. He's always done an event, I think. I don't know. But one story option I think could really put things in perspective for Poke Turner, so we can see where, you know, where he stands in all this. I think Poke Turner could be a really big deciding factor, but maybe that's good why he's not on either side, because, you know, either side is probably if you haven't thought about Poke Turner in your shit, one, that means he's role playing really good. If you're not thinking about Poke Turner ending up in like fucking with you, that means that he's really, really selling the fact that he's doing his own thing, and you know what I mean? But if you're not thinking about it, at least you're not. I feel like everybody should have one line in their submission that's like, yo, if Poke Turner's there, you know, hide, participate, or like escape. Or do what I gotta do before Poke Turner comes or some shit. But anyway, Poke Turner, you go from average to below average. Your story lore, your scenario. What is a typical Saturday in Poke Turner's life prior to episode 7? So remember, this is before episode 7, but show us a typical Saturday in Poke Turner's life. Drav Komaz's goal was to get some gamma eggs and meet back up with Deathtude afterwards. The part about meeting up with Deathtude, that was perfect because I already planned on having Deathtude picking you up and reuniting the Safe Haveners. So that was the so-called pit stop that was referenced last episode and in the event for Rezinoc. This event with Deathtude is marking the end of that mini quest, like that mini storyline that I was conducting with the Safe Haveners. That's all. This is all part. It's important because it's going to be a part of some history, you know, being built around Deathtude and your characters. So it was important for Drav to be there. So I knew Deathtude and the group, they were going to go get Drav. In fact, I planned for when it happened, I was going to actually make it so that wherever Drav was, Deathtude, Rez, and Nom was going to fight. You know what I mean? Fight them. I probably would have did that if it was like someone that was like just by themselves, like one person that was like a weak person, like maybe like a new character. I thought that would be cool for their first episode, getting their ass kicked by Deathtude, Rez, and Nom. In my head, I'm like, okay, if it's just one person that's new, I'll have them like, you know, get Sephiroth, and then when they lose, like, give them like a badass perk because they like took a beating. Give them like a crazy perk that, you know, stuff like that. But anyway, Drav was put into 2 events, pretty much. So he lost the one on Monster Island and won the one training number 1 event with Rezinoc. And the reason I did that is because he lost the one on Monster Island, and I wasn't sure who was going to win the one with Deathtude, Nom, and Rez. Because you never know. There are odds, and dice rolls are crazy sometimes. And it wasn't too one-sided because Clyde was very powerful, and he was a big advantage, but so was Deathtude. So it was really close. So when I saw that Drav lost, I was like, what the fuck? I'll give him the W since he was technically there with them as support. So I gave him the W. So Drav, you actually don't gain. You lost a rank, you gained a rank. But the main event that you were on was the island, and you lost that one. But then you were pulled into the other one, and you gained. So whatever. That's how I would like to do it like that. I hope no one minds. even though losing Monster Island, Drav was still able to acquire some eggs to reward him for winning the Deathtude one, even since there was nothing to be gained for Drav in that. There was no reward in that Deathtude one for him. So I gave him a reward in the Island one. And also I'm trying to get this gamma egg thing going, and more on that later. But gamma eggs and gamma monsters are essentially, they're going to be like Pokemon, but in the world of Gamma Haven. Like, I want to make them an actual species. So every single gamma egg, I'm giving you specific numbers because you are going to be the only ones that have these gamma eggs. Think of them like as a strand, like it's just a species, and eventually they'll evolve, and then you'll be able to breed them into new species and experiment on them and give birth to create species. I want them to be like living creatures in the game that people can have, and in the meta, like, do things with them. I have a lot of ideas that I wanted to tackle with that. So these eggs, and the characters that have these eggs, you are actually going to be the ones in charge of how they are distributed and introduced. You might have one player who wants to breed them for battling, like on some Pokemon shit, but you have another one who might want to breed them for transportation or companions for protection and stuff like that. I think it's awesome how I knew that different characters would be getting their hands on them, and those characters all think so differently that I would be curious to see what they do with the eggs, because I want these eggs to be like how dragons are in Game of Thrones. Like, these are gamma creatures. Like, they would all be very, very, like, pretty major. At least the initial breeds, or the breeds that you make from them. So, I mean, look, you got Mistress Scorn. She already started. She has Skriller experimenting on them. But anyway, they're eggs. So Drav, you were pulled, and towards the end of the episode, you were pulled into the Manoware's black hole, all of which was inside of Nom Kei Ai's cognitive realm, which is in her head. So, you're not dead. You're not anything. You and Drav, you, Nom, and Rez, you're pretty much at a point where you can return to however you want to return. It depends on your next move. Okay, I'll leave it up to y'all, and y'all get back to me if y'all want to do something special. So you remain at average. You leveled out. You gained the Gamma Monster Trainer perk, so you got Gamma eggs. All right, you have a group of Gamma eggs. We'll figure out the number later, but they will hatch into a randomized pet familiar. It'll be a familiar that'll be completely randomized. Everybody's going to get a unique one. I'm going to roll the way they look. I'm going to roll their size. Everything is going to be randomized. And you got to take care of it, or if you're going to keep it, take care of it. It's currently on your person, these eggs. Okay. Your ability Acid Breath gains the keyword shrapnel, and the reason I'm doing this is because several times in your submission you brought this up, and I'm like, yo, that's a great idea. Like, I see where you're going with this. So now it's a keyword. It's shrapnel, and it's attached to your acid ability. So anything with that keyword, you can justify certain things with that keyword. For example, you can make it more dangerous, and get really creative with it. Maybe there's so much shrapnel, maybe the big iron ammunition poisoned the acid gland or something. Or maybe it causes your acid gland to get infected and it becomes like some really putrid, like really crazy. Like, you can justify it with shrapnel. That is a word that you can do a lot of things with. Story lore. So your story lore, your scenario is, what happened with you, Deathtude, and the vodka bottle leading up to the end of that episode? There was a trail of blood going from the doorway to behind the bar, and you were found holding vodka. You looked incapacitated. What happened? you know, did you crawl from like, did you crawl out of there? Oh, probably you crawled out of there and drank. I don't know. You tell us what happened in that gap of time. I think that would be pretty entertaining. And just how you perceive Death Dude. Grazzle Thruka asks, what's the fate of the safe haveners? Oh, I kind of just answered that. Sorry. But you know, the safe haveners are no more. They're not the safe haveners. They're done. I forgot that this was a question I fucking answered. I kind of answered it, but the safe haveners, they're nothing. They're no more. They were a group of G-types used to fulfill Death Dude's goals of capturing, taming, and reproducing an alien. That's what safe haveners were, and they served their purpose. They've all perished inside of Nom Kei Ai's cognitive realm, which is in her mind. And I don't have an idea of where y'all would like to go from there. I have ideas, but I want to see what y'all come up with. I think I know what I want to do with Nom. I think I want to have Nom wake up in the mental hospital, maybe in the Red District, the Saint. What's it called? The Saint District. You know where Maira Dare's hospital is. Because that all happened in her mind, so I think I'm going to make her crazy or something. I want to see what she thinks. Yeah, I mean, you can start it off in an event. You can jump right into an event. You can jump into a story phase. I think it would be better to do a story phase if I were you, to kind of flesh it out, whatever the safe haveners do next. Or I'm still calling them the safe haveners, but you know what I mean. All right, Marahall Mesa. Marahall Mesa chose Trial and Throne and was part of an elaborate plan to take the Fist of the Endless out of Haven and give it to Makai. The entirety of Marahall Mesa's, well, not the entirety, but majority of the submission was contributed to that plan. Okay. And the plan, it was all predicated on arriving at Nibu, sneaking into the trials as a member of the facilitator's entourage. You know, the facilitator in Rhydon's body would allow him to meet the requirement of having a political tie to Nibu, thus allowing them to enter and give the fist to Makai. So that was a majority of what the plan was about. So, none of that really came into fruition because the role was lost to Anarchy and his group. And their whole thing was making sure they found y'all before you got to Nibu. In fact, before you got away from Haven. And they won, so that's why it was more of an ambush. You know, you didn't get too far. You were in the water though, so. But you know, Anarchy and his group, their goal was to zero in on the fist, and they wouldn't have let the good guys get that far into Nibu. So it made the majority of Marshall's plan obsolete. This is another reason why, you know, I do ask for short sentences and summarized objectives, because I would hate for someone to write. I'm not saying Marshall wrote a lot, but there's some characters that still write a lot. But, you know, if it doesn't happen, it's like, you know, a waste. And yeah, so just keep that in mind too. But when everyone's actions unfold, things can happen drastically different just based off of who won the role and where they're saying they are interjecting. So if your submission is about reaching a location and the enemy submission is about killing you before you buy plane tickets to that location, one comes before the other. And, you know, I do my best to meld them together in some way to have something that you submitted kind of show, but some details from the winner have to get honored over the other. Like some details just can't exist together. And in this time, you know, the part that really made it, a lot of decisions I made was based off of that they were zeroing on you before leaving. So, or before like they would let you get that far. If they could zero in on you the way they did, they wouldn't let you get that far. If someone could zero in on you like that, they would probably be rushing to get to you, especially if they saw you were approaching the, coast. The part where Marshall's suit became sentient, and we'll get more into that, of course. There's a lot wrapped up into how and why that happened. But the part where Marshall's suit became sentient, that was actually a specific detail submitted by Ivan's submission, or submitted in Ivan's submission. So should he ever encounter Marahall Mesa, he's been talking about that shit for the longest, making that suit move. I think. Could have sworn I remember him saying something about that before. The part where Marshall felt something good, when they were floating on the raft, the part where he felt something good was coming, that was because of his, I kind of picture him having like this affinity for the fourth dimension, the fourth wall. Because he said something about like it's like an outer body of experience, and he's severed from reality. So I kind of view that as, being slightly connected to me as a director, an outer force, a whole different sense. And that was like kind of my way of hinting that, losing isn't losing, and everything is always leading towards something, because it's, it's a story. So, that here you have Makai, who he's like got this new power now, you know what I mean? And you got Sister Wyrd, Saoirse, she has something, and her goal is she's searching for something bigger than everything, and that's getting out of the tank, freeing everyone. So I was kind of hinting toward a lot of some, good things that could potentially happen. Because I would imagine, like, after such a crazy loss that it would feel hopeless. You got broken Looper in your arms, and Looper's always beat up. Like, your whole theme is around hope. You know what I mean? So I have several things in motion that, once capitalized on by a good player, it could drastically affect the tide of good and evil. So I interfere with the game in subtle ways. I don't force wins or fudge dice rolls. Instead, I put things in motion and throw things into the mix. Sometimes I put things closer to other characters, closer than others, and sometimes it's up for grabs. So, the Fist of the Endless could have been acquired by Drav. You know what I mean? The good guys ended up getting the Fist. This whole episode, it could have been all about them getting it onto one of them and using it. And then, I just gave a major artifact that was another item that was created in the same contest as the Fist of the Endless. Maira just has it now because it makes sense for the story. So just keep that in mind. TS asks, how do players know that Mesa had the glove? Is that not abuse of player knowledge? So Anarchy 12 has a perk called Ruler of Sector 12, making him the ultimate character when it comes to knowledge of unusual objects, artifacts, and valuables. It could be argued that he could have known about the Fist of the Endless even before Maxima knew about the Fist of the Endless. Also, one of his abilities is Black Market Mogul, so that justifies his knowledge of all things black market, coupled with his ability Advanced Tech and Robotics. So the Fist is a black market item, for one, and it's technology, so he has like a Saiko connection with it. Anarchy also has a keyword attached to his Advanced Tech and Robotics ability called Vision. It's literally just called Vision. And that justifies global surveillance. So when he got that keyword, when he earned that keyword, he attached it to there and created global surveillance. So now something like everything being watched is now justified because he has Vision, the keyword, attached to tech and robotics. And that's why keywords are so vague, because it gives you wiggle room to have that make, and so your powers can be interpreted different ways. So this is why the Bulwark Network app was hacked. And this is why Gorgon bots are watching everywhere. This is why Serenity and Nebu wanted to go to Haven, because there were even Gorgon bots spying in Nebu. Remember that episode where they smashed a Gorgon bot and she was using that as a way to get people to say, yo, we have to go take care of Anarchy? This is how Maira Dare was captured and taken to Sector 12. With all these abilities in mind, Anarchy also took advantage of narrative details such as hijacking your character's forms of communication and planning with Michael Holland through the Bulwark app. Anarchy also allied himself with Ivan Bakara, who runs the entire criminal network in Haven, therefore knowing about the Fist even being brought over to begin with and then stolen from the gangs. So, and then Anarchy's Gorgon bots are watching everything. So all that said, Anarchy and company, they used this story phase to locate the Fist using Anarchy's ability and their abilities, supporting his abilities and their skills to the max. And it was all justified. It was over justified. TS asks, in all honesty, if anybody can say I look for the Fist to find me, then how was I supposed to not be set up to fail? Good question. So not anybody could have just found you. Okay. The person that found you is probably one of the few people that could justify being able to zero in on your location. The other being the instigator, and even, one of your allies, the instigator and the facilitator used the same logic and method to locate you in their own submission. They stated that they would just find you. Even in your own submission, you said they would just appear out of nowhere. They use the same exact logic. So, I was talking to the facilitator. He even at one point said that, or agreed that the Fist of the Endless would have shown up as a hell of an anomaly in the inner workings of the tank. And the instigator isn't even a technopath like Anarchy is. So if the instigator can sense it with his magitech and it being something that, he's good with technology, it's magic, he created it, it would give off something. And Anarchy is a technopath, so he would definitely sense it, notice it. And I honestly believe anyone who picked up the Fist was going to be on the receiving end of a bad time unless they used it themselves. So set up for failure. I mean, I put it in the game to get attention of many characters. And here you are, you have it. You can't really say I set you up for failure. Especially, there is no failure in this game. So, TS asks, how does Coyote of Hope actually work? Your perk works when you, Coyote Hope. So your perk works when you are with your two partners, Looper and Jacob. And if Marshall is supporting them with an action, you all will gain a bonus to your chances of success. So, let's say, you're trying to diffuse a bomb. All three of you are trying to defuse a bomb. If you're helping them, you're gonna get that shit fit. You're gonna do that. Coyote of Hope. You're gonna be a really big factor in helping them perform that task. Or another example. So, for example, when you said that the Gamma Haven theme song sounded like a piano being thrown down the steps, if Jacob and Looper was in the studio producing the Gamma Haven theme song and Marshall came to help them, your perk would boost the chances of that Gamma Haven theme song turning out a lot better and more pleasing to your ears. Okay. TS asks, if I'm going to have to spend a story action to reach the shore, is that not a form of allowing players to grief others? Players can't grief each other because a player has no control over the bad stuff that happens to each character. So a player can't grief anyone because they have no control over what happens. when a player loses, I always put the character through circumstances that they would have to bounce back from. So this can be in the form of a temporary wound, like, you know, how Drav's bullet wound from the Big Island, from the Big Iron. But, you know, we can't consider that griefing. It's not Jacob's fault. I did that. So it's not your fault for creating the gun, you know, the Big Iron that did that to him. So it's not really griefing. It's me making a loss feel like a loss in a narrative way, since this is not a video game, you know, so I have to do it in other ways. So by providing a new objective, I'm able to kind of lead you back on the up and up, pretty much. Think of any video game character who something really big happens in the intro of the game, and then you wake up injured in a nearby village, and you know your first mission is to take care of some small cave rat or something because trying to get your strength back. You know, it's like that. Tempus is recuperating in the Nibu Mountains. Maira, she was stranded on an island. You know, you're stranded in the ocean. Looper's blind. You know, little things like that. So it's called being maimed when you get injured. I used to leave that up to the character to decide how you would get injured until I started coming up with the ways. It made the story blend better. There's different ways to inconvenience a character other than injuries. Any of these tribulations could easily turn into an advantage, though. So at any moment, you know, as you can see with Makai got his head fucking cut off. Okay, so and that's turning into something good. So you're stuck in the water. You're not griefed. No one's griefing you. On the topic of death, though, Anarchy and Ivan both are high enough level to justify you being killed in this event, but both of the players, you know, any player can make the decision not to kill someone if they don't want to, and Anarchy stated that he didn't want to kill anyone, that he wanted to capture them instead. So I made a director's call and decided against having Looper and Marshall captured because, you know, we just got done watching Maira escape Anarchy, and that's why instead I gave Anarchy Looper and Marshall's DNA, because I figured that's probably what he wanted. I just didn't want to have y'all captured and then, you know, every episode, every time, you know. But in regards to Ivan versus the Instigator and the Facilitator, I'll touch on that when I get to them. So Marshall, you go from high to above average. I hope I answered your questions, and those are good questions. I think everybody was thinking that. Story lore. So story lore for Marshall. Scenario. Your scenario is prior to episode 7. Marshall knew he was going to go on a trip to Nibu soon. And, you know, he has a store to run, right? So tell us about how he prepared his shop for his departure. You know, who did he hire that he could trust in, you know, watching his, holding down the fort, you know what I mean? Or who did he train, or what extra rules did he lay down before he left? What demands did he make? You know, so I would like to know who Marshall left in charge and all that good stuff. You know, what I want to know what that day was like before you left in your store. A little slice of life of a day in the life in your store before you go to Nibu. I can't wait. If you do it, I hope you do it. You don't got to. I'm just, you know, and it's going to be canon. Okay, it's going to be canon. Jacob Bastion. So Jacob Bastion chose story option, but because his objectives put him in direct conflict with the troopers, you know, he went to go recruit them. As requested, Jacob ended up in Haven's Hope event, attempting to work with the mysterious trooper. So Jacob's collaboration with Michael Holland in the slightest compromised their plans to distract and get the ship, you know, get the fist shipped away. So the sabotage of the Bulwark Network app was hinted when Michael Holland and his people were sent to the wrong location, which is why they never picked up Looper and Marshall, and which is why Looper and Marshall had to take that bum ass ship, because Michael Holland, who had a ship for them, which was supposed to be the transport. Now remember, in the initial in the submission by Marshall and everyone, by Marshall and Looper, the instigator was supposed to teleport and find them and offer his ship to take them to Nebu. So all I did, because that didn't happen and they failed to roll, I couldn't make it go their way. I had to make it go Anarchy's way. But to nod to that, I made it so that Michael Holland was the ship that was going to come take them. But that didn't happen either. So they expected a ship to take them. You know, they didn't plan on taking a boat is the point. At least they had intentions of traveling smart. It's just it got sabotaged. That was the point. And they never picked up Looper and Marshall. So Jacob's resistance. Jacob's resistance included many soldiers, you know, Mema, Tai Lee, Jerrod. And it seems like a lot until you break down and consider, you know, what actually is being brought to the table against the opposition and who had the advantages. So in regards to, you know, Jacob's resistance against Rtype and Eponi and Saiko, you know, an army, the resistance is cool and all. We're going to talk about the resistance later, but all right, so the way I think about it is, because remember, the army was it's not a perk. It's not even a perk yet, or anything to do with your abilities. So currently it's narrative detail. An army of normal soldiers is just a detail. So it's not one of Jacob's 3 abilities, and it's being thrown against the detail of an army of Rtype X's. So there's no advantage gained there yet. Because that's something that was being cultivated in this same episode. So it's a little too soon for it to be an actual bonus yet. It's not a perk yet, but you're trying to get that perk in this episode. However, you also ended up in some shit. So what had the potential to tilt the scales is the fact that they are equipped with your guns and Jacob's creations, which are your abilities. So I did give you a bonus because you still managed to tie it in to your ability, which is to have them armed, and Jerrod's creations. So they did provide an advantage because of that. That's why I focused more on the guns and the weapons they were using as opposed to them. You know, the HIRG rounds, and you know, they're just their guns and their firepower. And at the end of the day, they are just normal Haven punks, and Haven punks are not G types. Roderick's not a G type. He's a Haven punk. He doesn't have, anyway. But this was countered by Rtype's detailed submission about using his energy constructs for cover. So granted, they had great firepower. Rtype specifically stated that he would be using energy constructs for cover and, you know, distractions and deception compounded with Eponi's forced manipulation. Rtype also, you know, he was donning a high-tech suit made by Anarchy, giving him advanced technology, you know, giving him his own advanced technology hat to throw into the ring. What helped Jacob was the fact that the troopers were, you know, they were helping with firepower and tactics, and then Starrift's energy his support and his energy absorption, which pretty much negated Rtype's energy manipulation. Eponi's presence was really the true deciding factor, you know, along with Saiko. Can't forget about Saiko inside of the forest. So squad bonuses they're not stacked by how many players, but more so the advantages that are being brought to the table, you know, and ability variations. Think of like Death Battle and the things that they consider. But it was very, very, very close. Looming Nightmare asks, how many normal rank people would have to say, I want to kill this superhuman rank character before they can have a 50-50 chance of pulling it off? Good question, Looming Nightmare. Looming Nightmares, that's how he thinks. You know, he's thinking of the mechanics and how the shit works, and I respect it. This depends on their abilities and skill sets. It's not based on how many people there are. Okay, you know, I might give a bonus for just the fact that more so for the fact that people are coordinating, more, over the fact that it's multiple of them, because you're all like, some of your characters are like fucking superheroes. Like, you can take on multiple people. It doesn't matter how many people are there most of the time, especially Rtype X. It really doesn't matter how many people there are. He's very shonen, over the top anime, like Neo Matrix type shit. Like, doesn't matter how many people there are, but quantity can play a factor depending on the circumstances and the skills and abilities that each character has. So here's an analogy. Think Dynasty Warriors. Take the game Dynasty Warriors. A normal ranked player are considered like fodder soldiers, but a normal ranked soldier with an ability that can make a difference, that's when you start to begin to tilt the scales. So, you have a normal ranked soldier, fodder, but then you have a normal ranked soldier that has an ability that can actually make a difference. Okay. This is why Jerrod was like faring so well, because, he had an ability that kind of actually had value to the whole grand scheme of y'all versus them. So that's why he was faring so well, because, he was a factor. Another example of like a factor in the sense of what skills are on the table. Jacob, he has some crazy weapons, and he has a healing. So that's why there was a lot of, that's more gunfire. He had the bullets that did the sound, I can go on and on and on, coming up with different random guns that he would have. So I was trying to show off that he had a lot of different equipment. Okay, same with Jerrod. But another example of why skills make a difference, take this. So think of like an average. All right, so average fighter, a fighter A who's ranked average. Let's call him average fighter A, ranked average, against another average fighter B. So average fighter A against average fighter B. Both have a 50-50 chance of winning because both are bringing nothing to the table that gives either an advantage. They're both fighters. They're both average. But if you give fighter A a healing ability, they now have an advantage over fighter B. Okay. Another example, fighter A versus non-fighter B in a boxing ring. So fighter A has an advantage because fighter A is a fighter, and non-fighter B is a non-fighter. He doesn't even fight. They're both average, but one fights, one doesn't, and they're in a boxing ring, and the circumstances is one is fighting the other. Fighter A versus non-fighter B, C, and D. Fighter A still has an advantage because he's the only one that can fight. He'll still fuck them up despite it's only 3 more of them. It's just 3 more to fuck up. None of the fighters have anything to counter fighter A's fighting ability. So that's an example on a smaller scale. So now, if the non-fighters had skills and or abilities, then they could use to get the one up in other ways, then the scales can start, they can begin to balance. So fighter A inside of a boxing ring filled with hidden traps, okay, versus non-fighter B who can't fight still, but he has a dungeoneering / trap finding skill. Then the scales are balanced because now one is at a disadvantage, the other is at an advantage because they can deal with the environment. So, now both have something on the table. The environment and circumstances are what frame the odds between combatants majority of the time. Rios asks, does Rtype X still have Jacob's lodestone? Nah, Rtype X dropped it when he got punched. So, all right. So if Rtype X were to have taken that lodestone, I would have made it a bigger deal and a major quest. I would have made a major quest out of it between you two. It would be like maybe a little mini series between you two and Jacob trying to get his stone back. But one day there's going to be a moment where one player tries to take another player's item that is like a key item to them. For example, like Vegter. Vegter has an amulet where most of his powers comes from. It's just an amulet. And then you have Looper Stone. So that would have to be something a player would need to specify in their submission. You know, I'm gonna deliberately, my objective is to deliberately go after this and take it from person, you know. That's why I have objectives, and then there's details. That's not something you want to put into a detail, because that's a major objective. So I think having an object as an ability, like a lodestone or a necklace, I think having an object as an ability is a great option to roleplay. It adds a whole new dynamic to a character, and it's why most people find Batman more interesting than Superman. You know, you're attaching yourself to something. It opens up opportunities to create, interesting stories. You're not perfect. You know, if you don't have this thing, you're normal like everyone else. But no, Rtype X didn't take it. But it's possible for that to happen though. But he didn't. And there's a reason, and I'll show you a little something later. But Jacob Bastion, on a side note, Jacob Bastion is the second hero Gamma Haven has seen stand up against a perceived major threat. Okay, the first one being Tempus, who took on the Survey Day and the Gamma Fiend and Anarchy and the Advocate, pretty much every villain, and even till this day. So, since then, Tempus has lost students, love interests, allies, and then he lost Gate, something that he spent a whole season building. So another reason that ranks don't matter, because he has never been higher than the rank of high, I think. Maybe exceptional. He has never been superhuman or incredible. You know what I mean? Yet he has developed so much and has been he's been the backbone to the series. And he's not even a patron, for anyone who might think or thought that was a thing. So the point I'm making is the point of being a hero in Haven is because there are no heroes in Haven, which means your role is that much more important and likely bigger than most. So characters like Looper and Jacob are not only heroes, but they're not superpowered. And when they go up against people who are superpowered and over the top, you're winning, but it still might look like you're losing, because that's how I envision it. So even if Jacob won that role, there would have been a whole 30, like a whole minute scene of him getting his ass whooped, just like Looper gets his ass whooped. Even when Looper wins, he's getting his ass whooped. It's just the struggle. That's how I envision it. Octavian asks, is the foreshadowed threat to Haven Rez and Nom's child? There's about 4 major threats to Haven that have been hinted at, so I'm not sure which one you're talking about, and I'm kind of playing dumb. Octavian asks, what do you think of Jacob's Haven Guard, and how much potential do they have? I think Haven Guard is a force to be reckoned with. It's a force that Haven could absolutely need, if their intentions are just. They have the potential to become something grand, as long as you can develop them. Use story phases to build relationships with allies within the Resistance. Build lore around it. Build some NPCs that are in it. When we get Haven Punks up and going again, now that I can put some time back into it, retire some characters into the Resistance. Go to events that could be fruitful for the Resistance. So when you get those rewards, you can kind of flip it into something that benefits the Resistance. In this episode, you use the story phase to build them. The part of your submission about recruiting the troopers is what led you into Haven's Hope event, and that battle that resulted in some losses. So for now, I'd say that you're still around square one of building them. They all weren't wiped out, but you built them, you were creating them, and then you kind of took a loss just now. So if you're gonna take on an allied group of players that are all superhuman and have really gained a lot of momentum story wise, with if you're going to take them on with your Resistance, you'll probably want to use a couple story options. You know, use story options a few times to build and get narratively stronger. In this episode, the resistance gave a slight bonus, but it's not like I said, it's not an ability yet. Not yet, it wasn't at the time, so it wasn't a keyword, it wasn't an ability, it wasn't a perk. It was just a detail. So story options are there to build your character and do your own thing. The caveat is your actions were in the path of an event, so you were placed in the event, which is what you wanted, right? That's what happened with Jacob. You know, me and the player of Jacob talked about it. He wanted that, so he wanted to go into the event, but also wanted to build the guard. And I allowed it because I considered recruiting the troopers as a form of building the resistance, so it made sense. So I knew who the troopers really were. You know, they were just NPCs created by me to tie in the whole thing with the Virgin Tears. And one could speculate, you know, the Virgin Tears is the biggest threat. But because Haven Guard was being assembled in this story / event hybrid, they weren't partially destroyed. And that's why I say partially, because Rtype and Eponi, they weren't really out there to kill them. Maybe Saiko wanted to kill a few and she killed a few, but they were partially destroyed. So Jacob will get a perk that makes the Haven Guard official. It'll be something that you can use as a perk, so it can have impact, you know. So Jacob, you go from the rank of high to above average, and again, this is going to be updated on the sheet. You gain the perk Haven Guard. So you gain an army of Haven punks who benefit from your firearms mastery ability, and you can never be outnumbered. So as long as you have the Haven Guard and you're bringing them with you, you'll always have an army. You'll never be outnumbered. No one would ever be able to get an advantage over you because of numbers, as long as you have Haven Guard. And they benefit from your firearms master ability. So the same way you benefit from your firearms ability, so do they. Think about that. The other day, Jacob, we were in the voice chat, and Jacob said that I could make up the origin and reason for the existence of the lodestone that he has, his ability lodestone. Because you got to remember, Jacob, he has a lodestone. It's not like a normal mutation, just like kind of how Musket Mouth has a treasure piece. But he said I can make up an origin for it, and I have an idea. So this is what we're going to do. As I said earlier, heroes don't win because they're heroes. They experience losses as well, and this is what makes them grow stronger and overcome. So hope. You know, hope is the theme surrounding Jacob, Looper, and Marshall, and even the players of those characters. Your lodestone is a strange rock that found you. It is slightly sentient and travels from person to person. Your lodestone is actually the Hope Diamond, covered up to hide itself from discovery. The Hope Diamond is one of the submissions that was submitted with the Fist of the Endless. You know, that whole list of really overpowered items. So I thought it would be cool to make the lodestone the Hope Diamond. So you go down a rank. I don't know what your rank is at the moment, but you'll go down a rank for losing. But your lodestone ability gains the keyword hope. Just like your health returns to normal, your hope rejuvenates, making you an inspiring leader, affecting the hearts of everyone rallying with you. You are essentially a battery of hope. So I felt like that fits your character's theme so well. I don't know who submitted the Hope Diamond, but it's if you look at that submission that they submitted, it's crazy how it goes with your character. So did you submit that? I mean, even if you did submit that, it's crazy. It's a coincidence how it all came back to you, because it ain't like I knew you submitted it. You know what I mean? So it all came back to you if you did submit it. I don't think you did, because remember that whatever item won that contest would have ended up at Crime Bloat. So what are the odds of that happening, right? So yes, the Hope Diamond, if you look at the lore of it, you'll see kind of what I'm going for by adding it as a keyword for your ability. Story lore. So your scenario, Jacob, you are Jacob, and you can Jacob rig. So when you were creating the resistance, show us when you were Jacob rigging your soldiers' weapons. Tell us about an interesting afternoon that you shared with your resistance members as well. So, you know, we want to see how you were inspiring them, how you were building them, and what you were making for them. Shiro Aoi. Shiro Aoi was everywhere collecting information. He lost some events, he won some events, and contributed to Makai's attempt at the throne by providing info. And because of Shiro's ability, clones, and his role in the game right now, I decided to give him a perk that allows him to attend up to 3 events at once, but he has to take as many fails and wins that he earns in each. This means that he could lose all 3, he could win 2 and lose 1. This can send his rank sliding up and down drastically, constantly. He could become superhuman in a couple episodes, or he could become super trash. It takes careful strategic planning. So Shiro won, gaining information from Scorn's ship. He won giving information to Makai, but he lost getting information on the cocoon. So Shiro goes from above average to high. You know, you used your Nibu intel and you gained outsider visitor intel. So you used your Nibu intel to help Makai. That was all the information about Amanda. And you gained outside visitor intel. So that's the intel you gained from Scorn's ship about Scorn and the galactic expanse. Okay. Story lore. So your scenario is, tell us about an experience you had that made you so tight with Nibu and working as Vegter's spy. So why are you helping Vegter and Nibu? Like, tell us about something that happened with you and them. What's the story behind that? Cervantes de Ageha. Cervantes, you wanted to go after them gamma eggs. Both you and John took the same event, and that's why it was my choice to put y'all together. So for people who didn't know, they didn't submit anything together. I chose to put them together because it just made sense. It was perfect. I thought it would be funny because they're the types of pirates they are. You know, the player of Cervantes, she says that she has big debts and that one of her recurring gimmicks were her popping up out of nowhere to collect money owed to her because of her debts. So I thought it would be a perfect way to link Cervantes and Diageha with Musket Mouth, making it like he owed her money. So Cervantes, you know, her largest debt. Another interesting thing about Cervantes is her largest debts are owed to brothels, and we all know who owns all the brothels in Haven. So I thought it would be, I thought it was an amazing coincidence that Scorn is sending pirates after the eggs to bring to the brothels as well. Both of these people are after eggs to get, to bring to the brothels. It's a small world. It's an ugly world. But both her and John, they have luck-based abilities, Cervantes and John. And I thought it would be fun to add, add to the lightheartedness of their parts to make it so that when they're together, they cause bad luck in hopes, that this would kind of encourage them to like team up in the future for some more pirate hijinks. I just think that's an interesting dynamic. Cervantes doesn't back down, and she perseveres through almost everything. So that's her ability. And then she has probability manipulation, which makes her a force to be reckoned with. Because luck, backs up and offsets her disadvantages. So, or it can. But I knew that whoever attended this event would be the ones to get their hands on those eggs first. And these eggs are the only way to gain a gamma monster until, they themselves get bred. Because I really want these creatures to be the start of species. And so Cervantes and Ali, y'all have eggs. And so does Nova, or Scorn. Cervantes, you go from average to below average. You also gain the perk Gamma Monster Trainer. You have 12 eggs, including your own. These eggs can be sold for money or raised yourself. And they are companion creatures. So, story lore. Your scenario is, tell us about a time that you quadrupled your debt during a stay at one of Selena's brothels. So tell us of a time of an event that happened at one of Selena's brothels, and it ended up with you owing the brothels a lot of money. Okay, Nendra Bello. Man, this is a lot. Nendra Bello. Nendra Bello chose the Trial and Throne event. Now, Nendra Bello was away from the path of danger due to how it all unfolded, so I kept her separate. And I do that sometimes. That was a director's call. Nendra was part of a large scheme to have the fist surgically placed on Makai after the trials, using her labs and biological mastery. She was part of that big scheme, but because half of that didn't happen and half of her submission was cut because, that never came into fruition. So the other half of her submission, though, is probably one of the most impactful parts or things to happen in the game. And I think it may have been overlooked only because I haven't really seen anyone say anything about it. That could probably be because they don't know what she created. So Nendra created a disease and weaponized it. It's called the End of Enders disease, which is a lore submission sent into the wiki. And of course, I think Rezinoc made it. Someone made that as a joke during one of the live streams. But at the end of the day, it's up to me to decide what goes into the game, when it goes into the game, and who it goes to. So, just so players don't create something that's designed to be used deliberately against their immediate enemy, I ended up putting that into her hands. And the reason I'm greenlighting that is because this disease can be so impactful in less obvious ways than you expect, and I want to see what Nendra does with it. There's a lot of things that could use the End of Enders treatment, you know what I mean, in good and bad ways. So anyway, Nendra escaped bondage with Tempus. And she goes from average to above average. And you gain the perk End of Enders virus. The End of Enders virus is something that you can put into motion. So targets of the virus will have their rank brought down to low until the virus is cured. So whatever you do with that virus, whether you get it turned into a weapon or a pill form, or you mail it to someone, when they are targeted by it, their rank will drop down to low until cured by the virus. Another reason ranks don't matter, because I think it would be awesome for someone to get hit with that and then they're at low. And then if they do die, everybody will be like, yo, you remember that time Nendra Bello made a virus and off the character with it? It becomes history. All right. Venryusai Ali. That was fun saying, by the way. Ali chose to go after eggs with Cervantes, and this is why I made it so Cervantes was escorting Ali from Ray Lugar. Ali and Cervantes could make a great team, and to my knowledge, they are actually mother and daughter in real life, I think. That's cool. And I would love to see some story from them, you know, with both of them. That would be tight. Even though they lost, it turned out good for them due to Cervantes' luck. You know, because technically their objective was lost against Mistress Scorn, who sent Nova to get the eggs. And that's why I kind of made it so that Nova got all the good eggs and everyone else got, like, you know, bullshit eggs. The eggs on that tree was where it was at. That's why Scorn has the good shit. And we'll get to her. But I just want to point out that Nova was impressed by Ali's, you know, swashbuckling. But he was hardly challenged. So you could imagine what his rank is. Ali's average. He was hardly challenged. That could, you know, but Ali's a beast though, so who knows. Also, the part with Ali's new subscribers, I just wanted to point out that those were names of the most recent players who joined the Discord. So I didn't just come up with those. Ali, you go from average to below average. You gain the perk Gamma Monster Trainer, and that means you got your own egg, and you got to take care of it. And it doesn't sound like it'll be hatching anytime soon. Maybe a couple more, maybe some more steps. Luperkin chose Trial and Throne with Makai. I mean, with Marshall. Luperkin specifically stated in his submission that Looper is opposed to handing over the fist to Makai, and I love it when a player wants a point to be made, and I'm able to make their case using the story. So in this example, I was able to, you know, reference all of the drama that was happening in Nebu to strengthen Looper's reasoning for not wanting to hand the fist over to Makai, and I thought that was fun. You know, Looper's just a normal guy with a good heart, and, you know, he can take an ass whooping. So he's on the right side. I view him as one of... I view him as, if anyone's going to crack, you know, I view him as being on the edge. And if anyone's going to crack, it's going to be him first. You know, he's just for the... I feel like Looper, the player, is just on a ride. But he kind of knows what he wants to do with Looper. But what I get from his submissions is, you know, he's role playing like a person who's along for the ride. You know what I mean? I picture him like Raphael from the Ninja Turtles. Like, I feel like out of these three, out of Marshall and Jacob, he's gonna, I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic between them three. Because they're all on the right side, but they're kind of different. So, I had Looper read that note that Jacob wrote. Jacob wrote to Makai, because it was some damn good role playing in that letter. Like, that was a really good letter. Jacob wrote that letter and said he wanted it in the episode. And plus, I knew Makai was getting his head cut off that night, and that boat was going to be stopping soon. So. That letter wasn't going to make it, and I wanted it to be read because I feel like Jacob put some time into that letter. Looper, you go from high to above average. Story lore. So your scenario. What is Looper thinking about when he has time to sort out his own issues? What is Looper thinking about? Share with us a time when Looper went to go let off some steam. Rtype X. Rtype X chose Haven's Hope. Rtype X was part of the group plan to search the event to cover ground. They went separate ways. So his goal was to search for the fist as well. Riaz asks, Rtype X's body, is it back to normal fully? Yes, but probably not in the most desired way. I imagine you look like Clayface or Spawn. You know, you were molded from an abomination, so thanks to Anarchy's technology, you were kind of like a shortcut. I mean, R-Type didn't really strike me as a playboy, so I didn't go as far as to make R-Type care about his image, more so his body returning into form. You know, so yeah. Story lore. Scenario. Share with us a moment Rtype X had alone to reflect on his current path prior to episode 7. So like a self-reflection, but also make it have something to do with that sword that you carry around. Why and why does your sword play a part with what you're thinking about at the moment? Eponi. Eponi teamed up with R-Type. Nativity of the Forest was an ability Eponi specifically stated that she wanted to do, and became the center of her and R-Type's strategy. So the player of Eponi wanted her to force R-Type to promise him to provide an explanation on why they're helping Anarchy. And I thought this was great role playing because it shows that Eponi questioning their methods displays that, you know, it shows the goodness in her heart still, that she's not corrupt. Combat IQ is a big focus for Eponi, because she's R-Type's pupil pretty much, and inspired by the understanding of creativity and combat IQ, she created Nativity of the Forest, which fills her with energy, allowing her to survive and endure, you know, in addition to creating a freaking forest around her. Eponi goes from high to exceptional. Story lore. Share with us a time when you and your tribe sat around the fire as your father, the chief, told you all really amazing stories, especially the story about Raylagar and Oceana Island and why they are connected, you know, kind of. Not physically connected, but, you know, Raylagar and the dragons is part of their culture. Tempus chose the story option to gather himself and save as much as Gate as he could, so he successfully recovered Gate resources with the help of Vegter. You know, Tempus used this story phase to benefit Makai by assisting with emotional control of Nebu, even though that didn't help, but he was attempting. You also, thanks to Vegter, you know, you now have the blueprint of the Gate Center. Now all you have to do is choose where you want the new Gate Center to be. So you still have the Gate Center. Now you just got to choose where you want to rebuild, and we're going to go through those motions. But for the most part, you still have what you had. It just got to figure out where you want to put it. You know, it can be anywhere, including Nebu. You know, even Nebu has G types. It's a bit more uncommon, and most of their mutations affected their ability to control chi. So they have mutated chi pretty much. So just keep that in mind if you decide to build it in Nebu. Nom Kei Ai. Nom Kei Ai's goal was to make the most of what was to come, gain respect from Deathtude in the form of clarity in his actions, and also roll for a baby with Rezinoc. The approach that I chose with the baby, the approach was so that the baby was already made. It was already in the making, perhaps faster than normal, likely due to y'all being mutants or being secretly experimented on in your sleep by Deathtude. But Deathtude removed your offspring and exited the area. So you and Rez and Drav have all been sucked into a black hole, essentially killing all of you. But this event is specifically for story purposes. So because Rez and Drav have been killed or lost forever inside of your head, I plan on bringing Rez and Drav back, and you know, in and you know, in a separate scene, you know, in the fashion of maybe all of you waking up somewhere or in different places, except I'll make it more interesting, but I'm leaving it open for y'all to go where you want to go. You know, I felt like I dragged y'all through a lot. It's over, and your purpose was served. So y'all come up with something, but the goal is for each of you to be able to continue as normal like everyone else. So the entire Safe Haven storyline was just, you know, it was a major quest, and it was important to flesh out not only Deftude but yourselves. You're part of something big, you know. So Nom Kei Ai, you go from high to exceptional. Okay, because y'all won that. Your PMS ability, and I actually just got that, by the way. I didn't, I never had to abbreviate it. Your PMS ability now has the keyword trauma. So now PMS isn't just about emotion control. Due to the trauma, you can experience great bursts of power and strength. It's going to be something like you're triggered by emotions. Your PMS ability now has the keyword emptiness. So by having the keyword emptiness attached to your PMS ability, this justifies the lack of an emotional response, and there's many benefits to that. This allows you to hold in emotions and save them for motivation, and it also allows you to control yourself and shape your character. So, and do things that one wouldn't be able to do with you know, by having emotion. So just keep that in mind. Pretty much I'm trying to make it so that your PMS ability lets you manipulate your emotions to your advantage and use your, you know, nuclear ability to its fullest potential. Story lore. Your scenario. Nom is about to be put back out into the world more emotionally fucked up than ever. So to put things in perspective, tell us of a time in the past that made it so that Nom Kei Ai is the way she is now. Why are you like this? Rezinoc. Rezinoc was accompanied by Nom and Deftude. Rezinoc has to choose 3 classes of mutations. This is the little system we have. I'll give you some insight. I make Rezinoc choose 3 classes of mutations to go into an event with. He has to either choose offensive, defensive, or utility. He can have 3 of each, 1 of each, as long as it's a total of 3. This is to simulate being able to adapt. So what I do is when he chooses what kind of ability he wants, obviously he chooses him for a reason. So if he's going in to protect someone, he's going to choose a bunch of defense and utility. You get it. So when he does that, I choose a random ability that works best for the situation he's in, because he doesn't know what he's going to encounter. So the best way to simulate that is by giving him the bare bones of the type of abilities he would use, and he tailors it based on what he thinks going to happen. And then I come up with a random ability that works best for the situation he's in. So it always appears that he's constantly changing and adapting with the hodgepodge of abilities. So he never knows what he's going to do, and it's always going to be a different move. Of course, he'll have his little signature ones, but typically I'm making it so that he's better equipped for the situation. So what I really tried to drive home in all this Deftude stuff is that Deftude betrayed Rezinoc and Nom Kei Ai, and Rezinoc trusted Deftude, and Nom cares for Rezinoc, so it sort of becomes like a chain reaction of just fault. But also Nom at the same time is feeling guilty. So across the board, it's just a bunch of guilt, anger, and sorrow because they lost something. The Manowar is a G-type that the player of Rezinoc submitted in a lure submission way back in the day. Manowar was a bit powerful to exist in the game at the time. I wasn't really trying to go there. So I made him appear as a fictional character within the world in the form of a comic called Gamma Friends. So he still existed, just in a different capacity. He's always been in the wiki. He's in the wiki as the Gamma Friends, as opposed to himself. So until now. So I wanted to pay tribute to the player Rezinoc by bringing Manowar into the game, and I felt that the whole innocence angle, because remember, Nom Kei Ai pulled the innocence out of Rezinoc and put it into a card. I thought that angle would be perfect. So Rezinoc, while inside Nom's head, was sucked into a black hole, but he's not dead unless he wants to stay dead. Otherwise, I planned on bringing Rezinoc back with everyone, using his Phoenix Rising ability, which we can still do. You know, when you come back, it's going to be with the Phoenix Rising. I want to use this to show off what it is. I look forward to it more than you do, honestly. So however you decide to come back, we're gonna rock out with the Phoenix Rising. But Rezinoc goes from average to above average. Because remember, you won. You didn't actually die. The story, it's kind of like with Makai, but Makai actually lost and died, but you won and died. So again, it's about the story. I mean, if you want to call it died, you got sucked into a black hole, but remember, you were already inside of Nom's mind, which is why I kind of want to go to, I want to start Nom off in like some kind of mental hospital, especially with her new PMS abilities. She's very emotional now. This is going to be our first time seeing y'all out there back into the wild again. Looking forward to it. All right. So your Phoenix Rising ability gains the keyword anchored. Anchored. Okay. So your Elanthier DNA has adapted and became resistant to being moved from your plane of existence in space unwillfully. So because you were defeated by being pulled into a black hole, your DNA has adapted to make you resistant to being affected by being pulled into dimensions against your own will. You are anchored. That's the key word. So anything involving being fortuitous, you know, unmoved, strong, your Elanthier DNA is going to alter the way you look, or, you know, something. I'll leave that up to you. But you're going, when you come back, you're like fucking, is it Doomsday? How he always evolves so he can't lose to the same thing. So keep that in mind. Anchored. Maybe you're like made of like a heavy, you're just really heavy, like you can't be pulled into nothing. Story lore. So your scenario is, tell us of a time that you spent with Deftude in private. What did he teach you about your race, the Elanthier? So tell us about your race and the time and what you were doing, you know, with Deftude while you were learning. Like, I know you said you like those chill scenes. I like that too. This is your chance to make one. Selena Rend. Selena Rend assisted Ivan in taking the fist. She and Ivan both used Anarchy 12 to find and locate the fist, and then they followed. Selena Rend, you go from exceptional to incredible. Story lore, your scenario. So your scenario is, if you could, share with us a moment that you shared with the Void Mother prior to the birth of Ivan. You got to remember, Selena is an abyssal creature that existed in the abyss way longer than Ivan. So much so that she knew the Void Mother. I guess you could say Selena is pretty much Ivan's big sister. Or whatever Selena is. It's not a girl, it's a thing. She just takes the form of a woman. A beautiful woman with jewelry. But yeah, tell us about a moment that you shared with the Void Mother prior to the birth of Ivan? Also, what was your disposition to the Void Mother? And then what was it, and did it change, or was it the same after he was born? What was it when he was born? I think that would be interesting to know about Selena. Ivan Bakara. I don't know why I said it like that. Ivan Bakara. Let's start off with what Ivan asks. So, Ivan, or Chaos, the player of Ivan, asks, "How could you ruin my mask? Who do you think you are?" I really like that question, and I wanted to kind of deep dive in that. So, I felt like the breaking of the mask was a symbol. It really, it was a small detail that was intentionally added, because I knew in my head that what Ivan has on paper against what Marshall has on paper could overwhelm Ivan in that particular type of environment. So even though I knew Ivan would win because of his role, even though even though I knew Ivan was going to win because he won his role, I wanted to use this opportunity to show off Marshall's abilities. Even though Ivan won, I still wanted to show off Marshall's abilities. It just so happened that Ivan was also showing off this new technology that he got from the black market. The thing is, everyone at any moment is going to be trying to show off or have something to show off. There's going to be a lot of great moments and reveals and debuts and premieres. The smashing of Ivan's mask was to show that anything and everything, no matter how new or fresh, is susceptible to the opposition's wrath. This can be said about a new character in their first episode. Maybe a new character's transforming and they get punched in their shit while they're transforming. Or maybe there's a hero who seems to have all the right pieces together and they're right on time for something good to happen. And they like Jacob, they have the resistance and it's what Haven needs. Or even the debut of this new mask. If I can destroy it to show how unbiased destruction is in this setting, then I will do that. Just to show that it can go any way and nothing should be expected. Because I kind of want to have those like knee-jerking moments for like the specific character that's listening, because maybe as another player you're listening and you're like, oh, his mask broke, but to that player they might be listening like, yeah, here's my new mask, check out this mask, and then all of a sudden like that causes the person to go like, fuck, what? Damn. Like every second something can happen, like just the tables can turn just really fast, and that's really the whole effect that I want. Like, so when Jeremiah was thrown in by Maxima with the bag over his head, I could have, that moment right there, the player is like, what the fuck? Like, how long do I want to make that moment? Those are the things that I think about. So the shattering of the mask is just like having Jeremiah feeling like, man, I got betrayed again. And then just turn the table again, like boom, no, but you actually won. So just little stuff. Chaos asks, do you think I have what it takes to beat Rtype X? Let's see. Animancy, multi-dimensional, and modified ninjutsu is what you have, versus energy manipulation, a martial arts master, and Libra. So you both have a martial art ability, so they rule each other out. No advantage to be had there. Ivan can manipulate raw life energy and animate it, and Rtype X can manipulate all energy. So Ivan's is a bit more specialized and more specific. However, Rtype is his ability is more destructive, and we're talking about a fight against each other. So it would really come down to the environment and the circumstances. So I would consider that a draw for now. Rtype X's Libra would pick up your maneuvers and learn from them. So as time goes on, his advantage would come in the form of picking up your multi-dimensional ability, which is your hopping patterns and combat patterns. So then he would gain an advantage for that right there, because that advantage would spring up eventually over time from fighting you, thus kind of nullifying your martial arts and your multi-dimensional hopping. So I give him an advantage there. Depending on Ivan's details and his submission, if he utilizes his poisons, coming up with different types of poisons, I would consider giving him an advantage. And also it depends on if R-Type writes something to defend against those fancy poisons. Maybe an energy shield that protects his flesh or something like that. So without the environment and circumstances considered, which is a major factor for Ivan's stealth and shadowy cloak that was made by Selena, we are looking at incredible versus superhuman with a bonus. So superhuman +1. So this is without each of you writing in details, and any detail can also warrant a bonus. For example, if you said it was nighttime, the nighttime could help Ivan unless R-Type says that he's wearing Anarchy's suit that provides night vision, which is another detail, so detail battles. That's why details are important, because I use them to weigh things on top of your abilities. So if a person's equal or close, like details can really, depending on what details a person said, that could change the context of or circumstances of things. Chaos asks, are you done with animations and voices? I do visuals when I have a lot of time to do visuals. It wasn't feasible. It wasn't reasonable to do visuals for a 3-hour episode, so I kind of went grassroots back to just audio. But I do plan on pulling the trigger on the Gamma Haven motion comic. I actually plan on doing that. I'm going to take a crack at it for next episode, where it's going to be a motion comic. It's still going to be audio, but with visuals. It's funny. I actually tried to make a short episode, and it ended up being the longest episode. But I really got to make these short episodes. I got it. I'll get it eventually. But as far as voices, I moved away from them because not all characters have voices that I want to do, and I want to be consistent. And that also takes time. So in regards to dialogue, I don't always want to provide dialogue. I actually want to move away from specific dialogue. And I will have a lot of dialogue in the Manic series, so that's probably going to be where all the dialogue goes, is the Manic series, because it's actually me playing as myself, and other characters, and it's more intimate. Whereas with Gamma Haven, I'm trying to more so paint a picture. But yeah, that's that. So Ivan goes from exceptional to incredible rank. Exceptional to incredible. Story lore. So your scenario is show us the relationship between you and your mother, all the way up to the events of losing her, or or just all the way up to now. Because what a lot of people don't know is that, because you haven't really touched on it, but like, doesn't your mother like follow you? Isn't she like a spirit that like follows you around? Or did you scrap that idea? Tell us more about your mother and the relationship, like a scenario when she was alive, if you want. Sister Wyrd. Sister Wyrd chose a cocoon event and was successful. In her search for something hidden, she's come across the cocoon and chose to embrace it with her blessed communion of souls ability. I meant for the thing inside this cocoon to be a major powerful enemy, and decided not to create it until I determined who went there. And based off what they were doing, I would create it from there. So I held off on showing what was inside the cocoon and didn't plan to until I knew what Sister Wyrd is going to do next. You know, for all I know, she might not be in the next episode. So I really want with that in that cocoon to be a major reveal, and I'll reveal it after I know that Sister Wyrd is going to use it. But I can say that Sister Wyrd has a powerful ally in that cocoon, and it will serve her purpose. So Sister Wyrd goes from below average to average. You gain the keyword followers for your mystic persuasion ability. So this justifies having a following to support you, because I feel like you've done so much in terms of bringing these people with you. I think in each submission you said that you were spreading it. A couple submissions you said you were spreading the communion. So now it is a keyword to your mystic persuasion. So that justifies having pretty much a cult. And you also gain the perk, the cocoon. So this is because it hasn't been revealed yet. So for now, it's just called the cocoon. When it comes out, we'll name it whatever you want to name it. But it's going to be something big and immensely powerful, and it will serve your purpose. I'm talking like strong, like bigger impact than the Fist of the Endless. But it's kind of different than the Fist of the Endless. The Fist of the Endless has some crazy powers. Story lore. So Sister Wyrd, you had a dreamlike premonition. It involved the 3 girls that were cloned after you. You know, Tempus and Makai and Kai Excalibur's adopted daughters, Rose, Amelia, and Serenity. It involved them, and it all led to the point, and it all led you to this point that led you to this cocoon, and gaining support from the cocoon. So whatever dream you had that involved those 3 girls who were all clones after you, they pointed you toward this cocoon. What happened in that dream? What was your dream about? And the reason I'm asking you this is because I want people to remember that you are the original G-Type 2. There's G-Type Zeros, who are people that live in the tank, that were created in a tank. There are G-Type 1s, people that have their mutations. And there's G-Type 2s, who we actually have not specified what a G-Type 2 is, but they are superior to G-Type 2s. I mean, G-Type 1s, and that's what you are. And Serenity, Amelia, and Rose are G-Type 2s. They're cloned after you. So I was hoping this dream sequence I wanted to give you the opportunity to make a link between these, you and those 3 girls. And why are they pointing you toward this cocoon? Naila. Naila chose the event Trial and Throne and was a spy planted by Makai. I thought it would be cool to introduce her as another potential chi beast wielder to raise, the stakes. Naila, you go from average to above average. You were locked up and must spend the story phase to become free again. Yeah, you're one of the people locked up. So is Vegter. You chose Trial and Throne and assisted Makai in taking the throne. And you also go from average to below average. Vegter, you're locked up as well. Starrift. He chose Haven's Hope event, and his goal was to recruit troopers to his armada. So I made a director's call and altered it for many reasons that I'll go into. 1, Jacob went for the same exact thing, to recruit the troopers. And for something like that, I didn't want to repeat, since I knew that the troopers were not going to be recruited. 2, I felt Starrift was way too big of a character and way too royal to be in line just to be declined by some NPCs that couldn't be recruited. I thought it would just be a waste of his submission. 3, Rtype was at the event, and there's no way I could debut Starrift and not involve Rtype mainly due to what the player of Starrift had included in his lore when he created the character. So Starrift is the son of a major villain that exists in Rtype's lore. So this had to be addressed. I couldn't have them two in the event with that kind of lore. You know, Starrift, he decided to tie his stuff to Rtype, and they ended up in the same event. So I had to address it. And I'm sort of foreshadowing Starrift's armada when I mentioned that Ali, Venryusai Ali, her mission is to inform Rtype X about the tragedy. Okay, this is a foreshadowing of Starrift and his armada, the tragedy. The tragedy of Ray Lagar is that villain in Starrift's father I was talking about. So Starrift's goal in his submission of wanting to strengthen his armada, I made it so that was done instead through strengthening himself by testing Rtype and sending a message to Rtype. So you're strengthening yourself. Your energy absorption has strengthened you. You absorbed energy from Rtype and it has strengthened you, thus strengthening your armada. So that was the thought process behind that. This is also why I didn't have you completely lose, because this was an introduction to your character. Technically you lost the event, but you know, you didn't like get your ass beat, and that's justified because you're a Ray Lagarian. You know, so you still gain strength. Since, you know, you wouldn't, if I would have continued with you going for the troopers to gain strength, I knew they were going to say no because their planet there, and you would have gained no power. So instead I had you fight Rtype and justified you gaining power by absorbing his power. So Starrift's energy manipulation, another thing I wanted to point out is that in the words for your ability, it focuses on absorbing energy. So I do consider this a lot. When I had you fighting him, I made it so that you were focused more on energy absorbing and your combat technique, you know, your superior strong style technique. But I do, when it comes to energy absorbing, like energy absorption, I do consider Starrift's to be superior to Rtype, just for the fact that he focuses on that in the description of the ability. Starrift, you go from average rank to above average rank. And your energy manipulation ability gains the keyword reapply. So what that does is that justifies you being able to reapply the energy you absorb into more complex things, such as your armada. So you are pretty much a conduit, a walking resource, a battery supply. Whereas normally energy manipulation, you just absorb energy, you probably use it, redirect it, But now reapply makes it so you can be used. You can use yourself to just put any energy you absorb into anything. It would be justified. You know, you would be a great ally as well with that keyword. You know how many people would want you to, who could, like, if you absorbed Rtype's energy or anyone's energy, like, and put that into something that could really boost and buff someone. You can get really creative with that. You gain 2 perks. Okay, you gain 2 new perks. One is blue energy resource and nature energy resource. That can be applied to anything your character can apply it to. So not only can you reapply, but you have 2 sources of energy that you can apply, and that's the energy you got from Rtype's blue energy, and that's the energy you got from Eponi's forest, the nature energy. Okay. The instigator and the facilitator, I can do them together. So both of these characters chose Trial and Throne, and their goal was to assist Marshall and Looper and take the fist to Makai. So whenever there's a conflict that I think is major, I might reach out to the player to get it straightened out. And so I did with them, because I felt that this was out of character for how I've been portraying the Instigator and his brother. You know, when they came into the game, the Instigator's character submission straight up said he was an evil mastermind. So I asked him if he wanted to be the big baddie, and he said yeah, and so I put him in a role. And I thought this was out of character just a little, you know. And this has been an ongoing conversation. I usually reach out to the player, you know, ask questions, trying to get a better idea of what they're going for, to kind of justify why their character's doing what they're doing. To have these evil masterminds and the reason for all of this to come work with the good guys and hand deliver something that they themselves should probably keep to the biggest, and you know, they're handing it to the biggest good guy in the game. That was just something I wasn't really trying to do mental gymnastics for, to, you know, to kind of justify and put into the story. But long story short, they convinced me. So the plan was for them to come out of nowhere, literally, or as some would say, magically find them, and have some sort of conversation with Looper and Marshall that made them friends. And then, now mind you, Looper doesn't even want to give the glove to Makai. Looper doesn't even want to give the glove to Makai. But here we have these two bad guys wanting to help deliver the fist. So somehow Looper was going to be okay with it. Makai was going to be okay with it. Tempus was going to be okay with working with these guys. I didn't see it. I couldn't see it. And they were going to have Rhydon, who is this. The best part I thought was they were going to have Rhydon, who is a political figure, walk in as a spectator and guest, with Marshall as, you know, as the entourage. And I thought that I pictured that would have been cool, because Rhydon's, you know, he's a political figure, but it's really like this possessed Rhydon. It was just more so the fact of how they would have gotten into Nebu, and why their motives and intentions is what I couldn't really imagine. But they were going to deliver the fist to Makai that way, so Makai can attach it and take out Anarchy, who was put in power by the Instigator to begin with. But like I said, things changed anyway, and the dices were rolled, and the good guys failed against Anarchy and his crew, and that changes everything. You know, Anarchy ends up ambushing them. That was their plan, was to zone in on them, ambush them. And I'm just not going to have the Instigator and Facilitator come in and explain why they are there to escort the good guys while fighting Anarchy. There was no time to talk about that. The Instigator had history with Anarchy, and so it was my job to keep everyone playing their part. So the Instigator wouldn't, while fighting Anarchy, wouldn't say, "I'm here to help get the fist to Makai. That's why I'm here. Believe me." Instead, the Instigator would have come after, you know, Anarchy and them came, because Anarchy won the role in their ambushing, and he would talk shit to Anarchy about their history, and that's why it happened that way. Now, I could have had the Instigator and his brother come first and explain their sudden change of heart, but they failed their role, and things don't, you know, happen the way they are planned when the role is lost. So I did ask a facilitator, who at the time was, you know, speaking on behalf of of both of them, that he and his brother are sure that they want to go to this event, because I asked them if they were sure, knowing that Anarchy and Ivan was coming, because they said something along the lines of laying low and staying out of trouble, and I was like, well, this is the last event you want to go to if you're trying to lay low and stay out of trouble. You know, because, you know, I knew a battle was going to happen here, and I never do that. I never ask a player if they're sure they want to, you know, if they're sure they want to take that action. But they were doing something that I felt was out of character, so I was kind of trying to convince them not to, so I didn't have to write the Instigator helping the Coyote of Hope in the story. Especially because, you know, Ivan was going to be there, and I knew they were spirits. They're literally life energy inside of people. So I'm like, that's a big ass advantage waiting to happen. Like, maybe. So they chose to go. So the facilitator in Discord says, I intended to run, so why the fuck didn't they? You know, running was nowhere in the submission, and I did see instigators say that y'all were going to escape Haven, but that was the whole point, right? To escape Haven. You know, that's what Marshall and Looper was doing. They were escaping Haven. But you did escape Haven. You were outside of Haven when all this happened. You were in the ocean. But if someone says that they are escaping in their submission, they have to win their roles for what they want to come into fruition, or else everybody's not going to lose. They could just say they're escaping. But so Anarchy chose not to kill anyone, but I can't say the same for Ivan. So y'all lost and y'all are eligible for death, but Ivan's not killing anyone. Now, instead of having Ivan just sucking y'all into his eye in seconds, I wanted to show you both in action. Especially, you know, with the Instigator and Anarchy reuniting, you know, and a reuniting of the minds, Anarchy versus the Instigator. Ivan was able to suck you into his eye eventually because the requirements for death have been met. So it was like a finishing move, essentially. You know, it's where your life force would have gone anyway. You know, if your head was cut off, your life force would have went into Ivan. So I just had him suck you out of the body, since you were you're just life force inside of bodies anyway. And he's done that before with life force. So I thought it would have been cool. But of course, you know, that's why I had y'all, you know, doing the things y'all were doing, just to show y'all what y'all were capable of. Now, as characters, your souls are probably just as old, if not older, than Selena and Ivan. So I would imagine your souls would be pretty big deals in the abyssal realm. Just a thought. You know, the normal way out is to have your soul placed back into a new body by Ivan with a contract. And there seems to be a war coming between the Void and the light, the Yaga light. So you might have a chance to team up with Makai after all, if you're still playing. Story lore, and we'll touch on even more with Anarchy and the Instigator when I get to Anarchy. But story lore, tell us of an amazing moment the Instigator and the Facilitator shared prior to becoming undead liches. John Musketmouth. You still have your fleet. You still have Cervantes aboard, but you also got yourself some special gamma eggs, 5 to be exact. You gained the perk Gamma Egg Trainer as well, and should take care of your special eggs that could become special creatures that could make you a rich man later, when gamma monsters become the new currency. But you technically lost the event, but because of your treasure piece, you were still able to be led to some eggs on your way back to the ship. On your way back from your loss, you still were able to get what you wanted. So, John, you go from average to below average. Okay? Story lore. Tell us about the time you made your first big discovery. How did you find your treasure piece? Those are kind of two things, but I think you can mix them together. Death Trigger. Okay, Death Trigger. This was Death Trigger's first episode, and his goal was to hunt down a cartel member. Very, very different from everybody's. This is a great way to bring your character in. Story option, show us what you do in your daily life. So his goal was to take out a cartel member. I loved your submission, and you know, you gave me a great opportunity, and it was a pleasure introducing your character. I felt it was a great slice of life in Palladia as well. Death Trigger, he specifically stated that he didn't want his moves to make a sound, so that's why that scene played out the way it did. But I couldn't resist the hand clap. I'm sorry. You gained the perk Look for Work. Okay, you gained the perk Look for Work. And What that means is during the story option only, when you're doing a story option, you can take a hit out on a random character, making them your target. But you don't know who it's going to be. I'm going to put you against a random person, and you can gain a rank from this by taking them out, by being successful at taking them out. However, this will put you in the path of an event if they're on an event. So keep that in mind. So it's like an alternate way of gaining gaining ranks through a story option. But it puts you in the path of danger as well. So keep that in mind. So, story lore. We don't know much about Torosol or Los Torosanos, or that place. So what is it like being a minority in Haven as a bounty hunter who is also Torosan? Remember, y'all are like horned people, like centaur, like humanoid minotaur people. And it's not that many of you. So tell us what it's like being a bounty hunter minority, and tell us of a time that you faced an obstacle because you were a Torosan minority bounty hunter. Okay, Anarchy chose the story phase and used his ability Advanced Tech and Robotics to monitor all communication. The Bulwark app, Gorgon bots, black market intel. He used Ivan's criminal network intel and his psychic connection with all technology to pinpoint the location of the fist, then brought Ivan and Selena with him. Okay, no metagaming, no flaws, just a great use of your abilities. Looming Nightmare asks, how did Anarchy know enough about the Instigator's phylactery to be able to counter it? The phylactery is nothing to be countered. It's just a detail in the Instigator's lore. The phylactery didn't need to be known about at all. I was just acknowledging their lore by mentioning it. I could have just said they died. I didn't even have to mention the phylactery. It wasn't going to have a factor. It was just, just story stuff, story fluff. The Instigator used to have an ability called Lichdom that was focused on the concept of being a lich and having a phylactery. Only then would that have had some influence, but even still, the role was lost. So I would imagine his soul would still have been pulled away from the phylactery into Ivan's eye because he lost. I mean, hell, the phylactery is nowhere near where they are anyway. So, I had the Instigator rework and balance his character, just like I do with all characters when I see a potential issue. And he decided to do away with the Lichdom ability. And so it just became part of his character's description detail. The Instigator and the Facilitator were always bodiless, always like, they're liches. So I see their souls now in the void. That's why their souls are now in the void. Looming Nightmare asks, how does Anarchy have some of his bizarre anti-magic technology if he never spent any story phases researching it? He did spend story phases researching it. I don't know how far back everybody listens to the episodes, but it's back there. It's way back there. Anarchy was rewarded with the keyword brain somewhere back in season 1. And with this keyword attached to his technology, he used knowledge he gained from Rtype and created an altered version of Libra called the Oracle. And the Oracle finds a solution for a problem and creates technology to counter the problem, then warps it from Sector 12 onto his armor using warp technology that he gained from the uncount alien he kidnapped. So story phases was spent on all of those advancements. It's the reason why Rtype X is wearing high-tech armor, which was debuted in Rtype X's solo series, because he and Anarchy traded resources during the story phase. There's a scene where Anarchy is approached by 3 hooded figures who give him a suitcase. The 3 hooded figures were Rtype X, his 2 clones. It was Rtype X and his 2 clones. And they gave Rtype X gave his 2 clones to Anarchy to experiment on in exchange for a suitcase containing some high-tech armor. So, you know, there's a lot of scenes that happen that might go over your head, but to those specific characters, they know what's going on. That's probably why you missed it. So this is how Anarchy was warping weapons to deal with the Instigator onto his armor. Don't forget, Anarchy probed the Instigator's brain while he was captive, learning a lot about him as well. This is also how he was able to warp that spectral gun onto his arm and shoot the facilitator the first time he met the facilitator with those spectral rounds. I even specify where he got the ability to do that. You know, I said that he got it from the research that when he kidnapped those G-types from the previous season. The spectral blades and rounds, they were required from the research he did on G-types that he caught. They were the survivors of that really mass battle royale that was at the end of season 1. And when Instigator put Anarchy in power, he let him work on. Remember, they all had to break away from the prison. There were massive G-types in that prison that he learned a lot. He got a lot of research on using his keywords. So there's a lot of history with Anarchy, and this is what Anarchy meant in the Discord. I mean, it was a little rude, but I kind of got what he was saying. You know, there's a lot of ways to play the game. So when he said that he worked from the bottom and was strategical and detailed in his moves, that's what he meant. You know, he's also been playing since the prequel. You know, back when you had to take story phases every other phase. So, you know, it's not a race to the top. That's why I'm not resetting the game. Well, I'm not going to reset the game. It's not a race. Story options help develop your character, and losing isn't always a bad thing. So there's not going to reset the game because people are behind, because I don't view you as behind. You're behind if you're not doing anything. Anarchy, you gain the perk Looper and Marshall DNA. And what this does is this allows you to create something by way of advanced tech and robotics using the DNA that you got. Anarchy also gets the perk Fist of the Endless. You have the Fist of the Endless, and it is now in the wiki for your view of capabilities. All of its abilities. There's a lot of abilities it has, a lot of meta abilities. So that's in the wiki. Take a look. I'll add it to your character sheet as well. But if you happen to hear this before I put it in a wiki, Fist of the Endless has its own page, as does the Hope Diamond as well, and the Fort Dorja or the Bort de Forja thing that Maira has. Story option. Tell us about the time Seth Masters first got the idea of changing the world. Seth Masters is Anarchy, by the way. Show us what happened to trigger this dream. Krypton. Krypton is a new character whose goal was to assassinate the troopers, and left it up to me to decide why. Which is awesome. That's a really interesting way to play the game. You know what you want, and then like you kind of let half of it be made. That's actually a recommended way. The Nox helicopter is foreshadowing of another character that joined the game that I haven't revealed yet. I almost put him in there, but it was way after the submissions. I wanted to be fair. So I kind of foreshadowed by putting a helicopter in there. But there's a character that somebody made, and it's one of the coolest concepts I've seen, and it's gonna really mix. It's really gonna shake some shit up in the game. But yeah, this Nox helicopter, it's gonna lead to something larger, possibly, because Krypton was left wondering why so much money was given to him, 3 Zarkons, for killing those troopers. So, you know, and we all know those troopers aren't from this planet nor this sector of the galaxy. So that means that whoever wanted them dead must know a lot, right? So Krypton could have done something massive by killing them. And he did, right? The tears, the virgin tears, they didn't like that shit. So Krypton was Krypton's role in that event, I ended up making it separate because he was way out of danger, and just a director's call I made. Krypton goes from an average to above average. You gain the perk 3 Zarkons. That's the name of the perk, 3 Zarkons. And what that is you can buy a lot with that. Just keep in mind that the black market is closed off, but the Dorinthian supply is open. You know, so if you want guns or anything, you can buy a lot with 3 Zarkons. That would justify you purchasing something, and that something would be in the form of a perk. Colonel Tai Lee, Mema the sexiest mouth. Yo, throughout that whole episode, I think I did like 3 or 4 takes whenever I said her name, because I kept saying sexiest mouth. Mema the sexiest mouse. And Jerrod. Gonna do y'all together. So Jerrod's goal was to locate and support Jacob. And Tai Lee joined the fray with Mema the sexiest mouse, who was in search of Jerrod. So once she found Jerrod, they supported Jerrod. That was in their submission. But Mema, in her submission, she specifically stated that, and Tai Lee, that they were searching for Jerrod because apparently he was running amok in the city. So I kind of just interpreted that as, you know, Jerrod's doing his own thing and they know each other. And Jerrod owes her something. And there's actually something that Jerrod like promised her. That's what I interpreted from the submission. So I was like, it'll be funny to just have like this really cool Jerrod moment, and then, you know, here she comes, because, you know, she's a humanoid like mouse person, and we don't have a lot of characters in game that are not human looking other than Drav. And when I picture Gamma Haven, I picture you got to remember G-type 1s, G-type 0s are people who just aren't mutated, and G-type 1s are people that are mutated. They can have all kinds of different characteristics. So picture just a cantina in Star Wars. Like, everybody just looks different, probably more so humanish, but, you know, depending on the mutation might not even be something that gives you powers. You got to remember there's like different levels to G-types. You know, you guys are pretty much, for the most of you with like really crazy powers would be considered alpha G-types. Whereas then you could just have a G-type who just has a mutation and it makes them a G-type 1, but they're just not as, you know, super strong or anything like that. So it's nice to have those characters that are really unique, like Mema the sexiest mouse. That's her fucking name. Her name is Mema the sexiest mouse. Oh, I think it was Squid Baron who asked where was the link to that song that I used for her. It's a website with licensed content, you know. It's an archive. It's called audioblocks.com. You know, you would only be able to download if you had like a membership or some shit like that. So audioblocks.com for that theme. Okay, so yeah, so Mema the sexiest mouse and Tai Lee, they're like, and the cool thing about them is they're like a team. They're like a duo. Like, Tai Lee is this ex-Western Wardinary, or ex-Western Ward constable, like Looper, but he's, I guess, Colonel Tai Lee disbanded some time ago, and he's like really badass. Like, he's a great martial artist, illusion, you know, has illusion abilities, and is a tactician. So definitely someone who could be really, really effective once they get, you know, some momentum. But they're like a duo, and I just think that's tight. You have pretty much like an ex-cop and then like some crazy mouse lady. And her abilities, first off, go to Mema the sexiest mouse's character sheet. Like, if you want to talk about diverse, her whole thing is just, it's so different. She has a paintball gun that shoots ultraviolet paintballs. So when I pictured the gun, I was like, this is some shit that's probably gonna like really, really hurt someone. I mean, you saw it, she was taking out clones, like pow, pow, pow. But the funny thing is what's coming. So ultimately, all of you were defeated, but Jerrod still managed to escape and take Jacob, Mema, and Tylee with him. So you all go from average to below average, but Mema, the sexiest mouse, you gain the perk Mematron. Okay, Mematron is the multi-platform motorcycle that Jerrod promised he would create for you, but never did. It could do anything possible, from riding on walls, flying, has, cannon blasters. It can submerge underwater, turn invisible, transform into a combat bot, like a mech that only you can control. Exactly what you asked for in your submission. You now have a mech, pretty much, or a multi-platform motorcycle. I like that. And I wasn't able to come up with anything for Tylee or Jerrod. Not at the moment. I would like to. Usually, like, characters that are new and they come in and they're in the episode, but not in a way where I could, like, come up with something to give them. I would like to see a story option. So I can have some more to kind of build off of. And then I'll be able to find where I could put you in the story. But I like the fact that y'all are teaming up with Jacob, because Jacob needs allies for sure. Saiko Aurelio. I don't know why I put that, like, Hispanic spin on it. Aurelio. That Cuban spin. Saiko was part of the group that went to Haven's Hope to search for the fist. And, as usual, Saiko kicked ass. I had a whole alternate scene written out where Krypton actually snipes one of her family members, because I got his submission and Death Trigger's submission mixed up. So you know how Death Trigger said he was going after a cartel member? I thought Krypton said that, because they were both new characters. So I was like, oh, it would be cool if I made one of Aurelio's family members the cartel member, because they're all criminals, and have Krypton go against Saiko. You know what I mean? Sniping her people. I'm glad I caught myself, because I had that whole thing written out, and then I realized when I got to Krypton, I was like, oh, he's the one that's sniping. So I was like, I had to rewrite that whole thing. Oh, that reminds me. Story lore for Colonel Tylee, Mema the sexiest mouse, and Jerrod. I would like to, if you all could kind of share a story from your own character's perspective, of a time that when you first met each other, or what you think of each other, as far as, so if you're Colonel Tylee, how did you meet Mema the sexiest mouse and Jerrod, and vice versa? I would like to kind of get an idea of that dynamic that y'all have, because y'all pretty much came in this together, and you're all really different characters. So I think it would be cool if each of you kind of wrote something that put some things in perspective. But story lore for Saiko. Tell us about a major heist that you and your family pulled off. Okay, you and the Aurelio crime family. Tell us about a major heist. And what did you do that day during that heist to make everyone in the city consider you the most psychotic of the Aurelio crime family? Mistress Scorn, last but not least, Mistress Scorn. Mistress Scorn chose the Gamma Eggs event and had acquired all of the Gamma Eggs from the tree, in addition to some special eggs. So you can consider yourself a Gamma Egg owner as well, as long as you take care of the eggs. But I know you have plans with those eggs as well, so I'm sure we'll sort that out. We'll talk. But everything with the Virgin Tears, for everyone who didn't know, that's all for story's sake. Okay. I'm actually working with Mistress Scorn the same way I was working with the Instigator. Whenever I bring in the next big shift in the story, or the next big enemy or big plot point, I usually pick a character to base it around. It can be a new character, it can be a character that already exists, depends on what idea that I have. And I chose her to be the character that ushers in a shift to the setting. The concept of the Virgin Tears, however, was created by her. Because I told her I wanted to bring something in from the outside, like a government from the outside of the tank to the tank. To do X and Y, and that's still a secret. But I actually let her decide on their approach and reason for coming. since she was a character that was from the outside and the first character other than the instigator, but for her to really come, she was really from the outside. So Scorn stated that the Virgin Tears, they would test and weigh the logic of the planet's biggest influencers, and that was Tempus and Anarchy, you know, because up until this point, people were really with Tempus, or they were, you know, against Anarchy, with Anarchy, or just neutral. And I think if you were neutral in this in all of this, you're pretty much with Anarchy, because that's Anarchy. Because you know, his methods are a bit crazy, but I really still don't. He's kind of in a gray area as well. But the whole point was for Virgin Tears to send some people to see where they stand, and that's why I added the Angel Troopers. So those troopers the whole time was something sent by the Virgin Tears to come and test Anarchy's theory, which is survival of the fittest. So they were tested to go after Anarchy to kind of, the whole plan was like, if Anarchy were to go to that event and lose, that would be the event. Like, oh, so, you know, who's going to protect you, Anarchy? But that he didn't even go to the event. So Rtype went in this place, you know, and we saw what happened. So, and as far as the other one, the refugee spy that was sent to gather intel on Tempus, that refugee was sent to, you know, pick Tempus's mind, and she learned, and then they would both go and report back to that diplomat. So, you know, things went left, obviously, and the Virgin Tears are pretty much looking to dispel the circus that is the tank. I guess they deemed it that it's just, not only is it something that they don't want to bring into their galactic expanse, but it should probably just be wiped off. It's an abomination experiment that should just be wiped. You know, and Mistress Scorn sees this. She was colonizing this. She saw potential in this artificial planet. So they are looking to destroy the tank, and how are they going to go about that? We don't know. We'll find out. But Mistress Scorn likely has an idea of what they do with, you know, structures or planets that they can't bring into the expanse, because she was just going to tell another, you know, star system about it, and they're like, no, we're going to destroy this. So at this point, I'm going to take it from here. So Scorn is now pretty much on her own as far as how to proceed with capitalizing off of everything. But Mistress Scorn did lose the patent device, and you know, it was the patent device and all that patent scroller stuff. It was an interesting idea, and it was a good way to show different paths of science and highlight just how little the inhabitants of the tank understood the meta that they are in. But nothing that I wanted to really dwell on for too long. So we'll see what Def 2 does with it. So Mistress Scorn, you go from above average to high. You also gain the Gamma Egg Trainer perk, and you gain a perk called Planet Infused Eggs. So, you know, before the device was taken, you were able to get Dr. Skriller, who had the patent device, and use it on the eggs and pretty much infuse those eggs with his science. So the gamma creatures in these particular eggs, you know, they are different. They're going to spark an entire branch of species separate from the other normal gamma creatures. Because like I said, I want to create a whole entire species of creature from these eggs. So anyone who has these eggs will actually be able to dictate how these creatures are handled and distributed. So, you know, think of it like a living currency or a pastime or a lifestyle that will be created from these creatures. But hey, that pretty much wraps it up. That was really fast. I'm glad I was able to get through that so fast. And I thank you all for your questions. I think I got everybody. Let's see here. I think I got all the questions. Yeah, but if I missed anything, definitely feel free to ask. And I'm going to try to enter in some timestamps so you can jump to your character. But if it might be a good idea to listen to others as well. You know how that goes. Because obviously I touch on different things and different characters, or if I tend to go on tangents, so you might miss something. But thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for playing. I hope that kind of cleared up some things. The main takeaway is that winning and losing is not important. It's about the story, because everybody gets rewarded at random parts in the game. So and of course, if your character dies, permadeath is a thing, but there's ways you can come back, or you can create a new character. But I like the idea of characters coming and going. You also got to remember too that not every character is going to show up in every phase. Like, especially when I move toward the original plan, which was to not have everybody in one episode, but I wanted to try to do it as long as I could. I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to make these episodes shorter. It's really harder than I thought, but that's my ultimate goal, because the shorter I can make the writing process and deliver the right amount of impact, the more I can spend on other things that I want to do, like the art and, maybe some live role-playing sessions, Haven Punk, my solo series. But it's a science, and I have to try to curb my ambition, because, a lot of you send in things and I'm like, man, this will be cool if this happened with this person. And I got to get better at pretty much shaving it down. And I kind of did some of that, the way I was writing, it was kind of like a summary, and that's really what I wanted to do. I really wanted to make a summary, maybe zoom in closer for some things, zoom out, and kind of give a summary. Like it's pretty much what I used to do when I used to play D&D. I used to always summarize the players with what happened, with pictures. But I would like to kind of tone it down a bit. All right, so next is I'm going to get the wiki updated, get the new characters in here. I would like for everybody who is going to participate with the story lore to go ahead and submit that in the Discord, but title it so we know like what your premise was. Just a title summarizing, pretty much saying what it is you're writing about. And I'm gonna review it because I would like for that to be canon, but it's weird. Like, you got to be careful. I got to be careful because somebody might write something that kind of conflicts with something else. So try to stay as isolated as possible. I tried to give you things that would kind of give you room to do your own thing, because it's so isolated and doesn't really affect what I have coming up or how I envision some things. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. I know this was really long, but I think there's a lot to gain from it. So if you were able to get through it, cool. Share that information with others for people who may have missed something. All right. Peace out.